Chapter 601 You are really a good disciple of our master. Lu Chen and Chen Wanrong didn't care what Yun Xianxian next door thought. They hadn't seen each other for so long. Chen Wanrong had accumulated a lot of longing for Lu Chen in her heart, and she needed Lu Chen to respond to her feelings. After practicing again and again, Chen Wanrong lay in Lu Chen's arms, her head lying on Lu Chen's chest, and she looked like a little woman. Seeing Chen Wanrong's tired look, Lu Chen smiled slightly, then raised his hand to tidy up the fairy's hair. Chen Wanrong said at this time, "Your Majesty." Before Chen Wanrong finished speaking, Lu Chen interrupted and said, "Wrong, don't scream so loudly." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Chen Wanrong was slightly stunned. After she came to her senses, she whispered, "Okay, good brother." Lu Chen burst out laughing. After laughing for a while, Lu Chen stroked Chen Wanrong's jade back and said, "I think you were confused by me, and now you still call me brother." Chen Wanrong reacted suddenly. Her originally crimson face became even more rosy, and her snow-white neck was already stained with large red clouds. Chen Wanrong then buried her head on Lu Chen's chest and continued to whisper, "Husband, husband." Seeing the shy look of Fairy Ling, Lu Chen suddenly had impulsive thoughts, but he restrained his inner impulse and did not continue to torment Chen Wanrong. Chen Wanrong continued at this time, "Master plans to go directly to the Mist World after the restrictions in the Mist World disappear." Hearing Chen Wanrong's words, Lu Chen was not surprised. The Mist World has abundant spiritual energy. Even if the spiritual energy of the world they are in recovers by then, it may not be as rich as the Mist World's spiritual energy. Going to the Mist World to practice is indeed a good choice. At this time, Chen Wanrong continued, "If she goes to the Mist World to practice, it is very likely that you will never see her again." Hearing Chen Wanrong's words, Lu Chen was stunned. He seemed to understand why Chen Wanrong mentioned Yun Xianxian at this time. Lu Chen then asked with a smile, Wrong, are you worried that my husband and I will not have the chance to attack the master in the future?" Chen Wanrong did not answer. She fell into silence. It was obvious that she acquiesced. Lu Chen continued, "You are really a good disciple of our master. If master knew that you had such thoughts, I don't know what kind of reaction you would have." Chen Wanrong said softly, "Master has developed feelings for you a long time ago." As Lu Chen's woman, how could she not see what Yun Xianxian thought of Lu Chen? What she said about looking for Lu Chen to restore her strength was actually her thoughts on Lu Chen. It's just that Yun Xianxian lived longer, it's just that you can suppress some of your inner desires. Moreover, when she was in Swanya Palace, Yun Xianxian always talked about that traitor and said that Lu Chen was a traitor, but in the end, she kept thinking in her heart that this was not because she liked him. Chen Wanrong didn't want Yun Xianxian to really separate from Lu Chen. She heard Yun Xianxian say that the world of cultivation is very big, with countless worlds. Once a Taoist couple gets separated, they may never see each other again in this life. Chen Wanrong thought that if Yun Xianxian went to the misty world and suddenly passed through a space crack one day to other worlds, then Yun Xianxian and Lu Chen would no longer be possible. So Chen Wanrong planned to push Lu Chen again and let Lu Chen take the initiative. If Lu Chen didn't take the initiative, and given Yun Xianxian's character, there's a high chance that he wouldn't take the initiative either, then the two of them would probably never be together. After hearing Chen Wanrong's words, Lu Chen said with a smile, "I also know that she has feelings for me, but she has been restraining her inner thoughts. In addition, she is stronger than me and has been suppressing me. In the past I have never been able to take the initiative in front of her." Chen Wanrong said, "My husband is now a celestial being, and his strength is equal to hers. He should not be suppressed by her anymore." Lu Chen smiled, and then said, "Since my good looks say so, I'll give it a try tonight." To be honest, Lu Chen had long wanted to conquer Yun Xianxian, a cold and ascetic fairy, but he never had the chance. To be honest, Lu Chen was indeed a little worried about what Chen Wanrong said. If Yun Xianxian really ran away to the misty world, he and Yun Xianxian might really have no chance in the future. After getting along for so long, Lu Chen also felt that Yung Xiangxian was different from his other wives and concubines. Although Yung Xiangxian's favorability towards him had already been 100%, Yung Xiangxian's Taoist heart was very stable. Even if she liked him, she can also make up her mind to abandon the love between man and woman for him. Therefore, he must establish a Taoist relationship with Yungxian before she runs away to the misty world and completely become her man. Only in this way can it be possible to keep Yungxian. Of course, even so, Yun Xianxian is likely to leave him in the end, but that is not important. What is important is whether Yun Xianxian has become his woman. As long as she becomes his woman, he may be able to find her location through the system in the future. If he does not establish a relationship with Yungxian, and if Yungxian really goes to another world, the two of them may really be able to live together in this life. It's hard to see each other again. After hearing Lu Chen's words, Chen Wanrong finally breathed a sigh of relief. She was worried that Lu Chen had been stalling and not taking the initiative, hoping that their master would take the initiative. Since Lu Chen agreed, there is a high probability that it will happen tonight. It is estimated that when they get up early tomorrow morning, their master will become Lu Chen's woman. After Lu Chen and Chen Wanrong had a warm relationship for a while, they left Yunrong Palace and went to the Imperial Study Room to deal with matters. They did not stay until night. In the evening, Lu Chen came to Yunrong Palace again. At this time, Yungxian was still meditating in the room. Just like during the day, she still hadn't calmed down. She was already trying to calm herself down, but her heart was very confused. At this moment, she sensed that Lu Chen had arrived at Yunrong Palace. Yungxian couldn't help but think that since she couldn't force her heart to regain peace, she might as well try dual cultivation. Maybe after practicing the Dragon and Phoenix Yin and Yang Kung Fu together, they could make their own the Taoist mind stabilized. Of course, the practice she was thinking of was not the practice like that of Lu Chen and his wives, but the practice of sitting face to face, just like before, stimulating Lu Chen to have thoughts about her, and then letting the Dragon and Phoenix Yin and Yang Gong work. Thinking of this, Yun Xianxian opened her eyes and waved her hand. The door to the room she was in opened the next moment, and then Lu Chen felt a strong force pulling his body inside. But now that Lu Chen is a heavenly being, it is impossible for Yun Xianxian to directly suck Lu Chen's body like before. After feeling the power in his body, Lu Chen just raised the corners of his mouth slightly, without resisting, and allowed the power to suck his body away. The next moment, Lu Chen appeared in front of Yun Xianxian. Yun Xianxian glanced at Lu Chen. Lu Chen was not wearing a dragon robe at this time, but was wearing white clothes. He looked very handsome and out of dust. End of chapter. Chapter 602. What did you do to your teacher? After Yun Xianxian glanced at Lu Chen, she suddenly felt her heartbeat speed up and the spiritual power in her body became more chaotic. She quickly exercised her skills and tried to calm down the restless spiritual energy in her body. Then she waved her hand, closed the door to the room, and said to Lu Chen, "Okay, let's get started." After Yun Xianxian finished speaking, Lu Chen still stood where he was and did not move. Seeing that Lu Chen didn't move, Yun Xianxian was stunned for a moment, and then said, "What, you don't want to help my master regain his strength?" Yun Xianxian thought in her mind that this guy might have broken through to the realm of heaven and thought that he was his opponent. In addition, he also had an earth-level spiritual weapon in his hand, so he was no longer afraid of her, so he didn't plan to be her anymore. "Are you a tool, man?" Just when Yun Xianxian was thinking this, Lu Chen said with a smile, "Master, it's not that I don't want to help you regain your strength, I really want to help you regain your strength. The restrictions in the mist world are about to disappear. I heard that after the restrictions in the mist world disappear, Master, you will go to the mist world to practice. The world of mist is so dangerous, and there are so many powerful people above heaven and humans. With Master's current strength, if you go to the world of mist, you will definitely encounter a lot of dangers. This disciple is very worried about Master's safety. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian was confused and didn't know what Lu Chen wanted to say. Yun Xianxian said directly, "Whatever you want to say, just say it directly, don't beat around the bush in front of my teacher." Lu Chen said directly, "What I mean is that if Master really wants to go to the foggy world, he should wait until his strength is fully restored before going. This way, even if he encounters danger, he can be more assured." Yun Xianxian still didn't understand Lu Chen's purpose, but she didn't care. She said calmly, "This has nothing to do with you. You don't have to tell my teacher these things." Lu Chen said, "How come it has nothing to do with the disciple? You are the master that the disciple respects most. If something happens to you, the disciple will be very sad." Seeing that Lu Chen hadn't stated his intention yet, Yongxian Xianlu frowned slightly. "What exactly do you want to say?" Lu Chen looked into Yun Xiangxian's eyes and said with a smile, "The disciple wants to help the master regain his strength as soon as possible, so that the disciple can rest assured even if the master goes to the misty world." Yun Xianxian said in confusion, "Since you said you want to help my master regain his strength, what are you still doing standing there?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "The disciple feels that our previous method of restoring practice is too slow to restore strength. The master should know the real method of using the dragon and phoenix yin and yang cone. The disciple wants to use the complete dragon and phoenix yin and yang cone to help the master recover strength." Lu Chen had already spoken to this extent. How could Yun Xianxian not hear what Lu Chen was thinking? A blush appeared on Yun Xiangxian's frosty jade face, and then she scolded him angrily, "Traitor! You know what you are talking about." "What?" Lu Chen said without changing his expression, "Of course I know what I'm talking about." Yun Xianxian continued to scold, "You actually want to deceive the master and destroy the ancestors." Lu Chen said with a smile, "The master said it was serious. The disciple wanted to help the master recover his strength as soon as possible. How did it turn into bullying the master and destroying the ancestors?" Yun Xiangxian's lavender eyes stared at Lu Chen's eyes, and said coldly, "I tell you, don't even think about it, I will never have an affair with you." Yun Xianxian had long known that Lu Chen was greedy for her body, but she originally thought that she could suppress Lu Chen, so she didn't pay too much attention to it. As a result, this guy broke through to the heavenly realm so quickly. If this guy's wings become stiff, he will of course have the idea of deceiving his master and destroying his ancestors again, but it is impossible for Yun Xianxian to agree. She doesn't want to get involved with Lu Chen. She always felt that Lu Chen's origin was not simple. If she had anything to do with Lu Chen, she would never be able to end this relationship in her life. Let alone this life, she might be involved in this cause and effect for the rest of her life. Lu Chen didn't care about Yun Xiangxian's rejection. He knew from the beginning that Yun Xianxian would react like this, but he would not give in to Yun Xianxian today like before. He must make Yun Xiangxian his woman tonight. Some things cannot be delayed. If he does not succeed today, Yun Xiangxian may run away and find a place to hide when he finds out that he is serious. It won't be so easy to find her again. Lu Chen stared into Yun Xiangxian's eyes and said affectionately, "Master, I like the master from the bottom of my heart, and I also want to help the master recover his strength quickly. I also ask the master to give the disciple a chance." When Yun Xianxian saw that Lu Chen still didn't give up, she knew that she would either drive Lu Chen out today, or she would be crushed on the bed by this traitor. Yun Xianxian said directly, "Get out of here. I don't need you to help me regain my strength." Lu Chen seemed to have not heard Yun Xiangxian's words, and still stood motionless. Seeing that Lu Chen had not left yet, the blush on Yun Xiangxian's cold face became thicker and thicker. This damn traitor seemed to be in trouble today. Wan was determined to occupy her body. No, this guy is already a heavenly being. The most important thing is that he should have an earth-level spiritual weapon on his body, if he really wants to take action later. I'm afraid I won't be able to benefit from it either. Since this guy doesn't want to leave, just leave by yourself. Thinking of this, Yun Xianxian said directly, since you don't want to leave, then just leave as a teacher. As soon as the words fell, Yun Xianxian got up from the bed and planned to escape. As a result, just as she was about to take action, Lu Chen suddenly took action and directly grabbed her slender wrist. Yun Xianxian did not expect that Lu Chen would be so bold and dare to attack her directly. Yun Xianxian immediately said, "Traitor! What do you want to do? Let me go. If you don't let go, I'll be rude to you." Lu Chen said with a smile, "If Master really wants to take action against this disciple, I will have no regrets." You. Seeing that Lu Chen refused to let go, Yun Xianxian had no choice but to gather her spiritual power and use ice to restrict Lu Chen's movements. But at this moment, Yun Xianxian suddenly discovered a problem, that is, the spiritual power in her body seemed to have disappeared. She completely felt the existence of spiritual power in her body. At this time, she was no different from an ordinary person. What happened? There was a hint of panic on Yun Xiangxian's cold and beautiful face. This was the first time since she came to this world that her whole body's spiritual power was blocked, and she didn't even know what was causing it. Yun Xianxian looked at Lu Chen and said with a slight panic, What did you do to my master? Why did all my spiritual power dissipate?" Lu Chen replied, "Disciple didn't do anything." At this point, Lu Chen showed a smile, and then said, "Master, could it be that you were indulging in lust and did not want to leave the disciple, so you deliberately said that the spiritual power in your body had dissipated, and then stimulated the disciple to take action against you?" End of chapter. Chapter 603 Master, do you think I look like a fool? Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian became even more ashamed and angry. How could she really want to indulge in lust as Lu Chen said? She was not that kind of woman. Although her spiritual power had been sealed, Yun Xianxian still had some skills in fists and kicks, and her other one suddenly blasted towards Lu Chen. However, for Lu Chen, a heavenly being, it was impossible for Yun Xianxian to do any harm at this time. Lu Chen reached directly with his other hand and immediately grasped Yun Xiangxian's fist. Yun Xianxian wanted to continue struggling, but Lu Chen suddenly turned his feet slightly at this time. Yun Xiangxian's whole body fell on the soft couch, and Lu Chen's body also fell down, directly pressing on Yun Xianxian. On top of Xiangxian's soft body, Yun Xianxian was really panicked this time. Her spiritual power suddenly disappeared, and this traitor completely suppressed all her movements. If she continued like this, she might become this traitor's woman next. Yun Xianxian looked into Lu Chen's eyes and threatened with shame and anger, "Rebel, I am." Before Lu Chen finished speaking, he was interrupted by Lu Chen. Lu Chen said with a smile, "Master, no matter what world you come from or what kind of force you come from, this disciple must get you tonight. It's useless whatever you say." Yun Xianxian immediately scolded, "You bastard!" At this point, Yun Xianxian began to twist his body, trying to get rid of Lu Chen's control. However, both of her hands were now controlled by Lu Chen and she could not move at all. Seeing the holy white-haired fairy in front of him, Lu Chen could no longer bear it. When Yun Xian moved like this, Lu Chen wanted to conquer her even more. Lu Chen immediately pushed Yun Xiangxian's arms down on both sides of Yun Xiangxian's head, and then slowly leaned down. Seeing Lu Chen's head getting closer and closer to him, Yun Xianxian became even more panicked. The originally cold fairy lost all pretense at this moment. Yun Xianxian suddenly thought of something, so she quickly said, "I can be your woman, but I have a requirement." Hearing Yun Xiangxian's words, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. He stopped, looked into Yun Xiangxian's eyes and asked, "What is the request master said?" Yun Xianxian said, "I am not ready yet, so you can wait for a while." Lu Chen burst out laughing, "Master, do you think I am a fool? The meat is already in your mouth and you still don't eat it. Do you have to keep it? Do you really think that this disciple doesn't know what you are thinking? You want to escape from Yancheng immediately after I let you go, and then find a place to hide, right?" Seeing that Lu Chen had easily seen through her plan, Yun Xianxian became desperate. She also knew that her excuse might be useless, but she could only make this excuse. This traitor has already made up his mind to do that kind of thing to her, and now besides delaying time, what else can he do? The most important thing is that she has no idea how the spiritual power in her body is displayed, and she doesn't even know when she was hit. Lu Chen just touched her body and she couldn't use her spiritual power. She didn't seem to have heard of this method in the world of cultivation in the past. She had heard of drugging others to cause them to lose their spiritual power. At this time, Lu Chen slowly moved towards Yun Xiangxian's thin lips again. Seeing that the tip of Lu Chen's nose was about to touch the tip of Yun Xiangxian's nose, Yun Xianxian quickly said, "I admit defeat, but I will kill you. Also let me understand that I don't understand how you managed to seal the spiritual power in my body without knowing it. As long as you tell me the reason, I will let you play with it." Of course Lu Chen knew that Yun Xianxian was stalling for time, but he was not in a hurry. In this situation, it was impossible for Yun Xianxian to escape. Lu Chen lied and said, "Because we have practiced Dragon and Phoenix Yin and Yang Kong together. After practicing Dragon and Phoenix Yin and Yang Kong with me, we are Tao couples. Your spiritual power will not be able to attack me, and when you want to attack me, the spiritual power in the body will be sealed by itself." Yun Xianxian immediately said, "Impossible, how can such a technique exist in this world?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "This is not a technique from this world." Yun Xianxian continued, "There is no such thing in the world of immortal cultivation." Before Yun Xianxian finished speaking, he suddenly thought of something. There is indeed such a skill in the world of immortality, but it is all magic skill. But Dragon and Phoenix Yin Yang Kung Fu is not a magic skill, right? Yun Xiangxian's purple pupils stared at Lu Chen's eyes and asked, "You are a demon cultivator?" Lu Chen replied calmly, "No. Not only am I not a demon cultivator, I even took the initiative to kill a demon when I was working hard. You can ask Lu King Kaiu. She is also not from this world. From now on, there are definitely a lot of common topics." Yun Xianxian snorted coldly and said, "Traitor, if you really did that kind of thing to me today, Lu Chen had no intention of letting Yun Xianxian say the rest. He lowered his head directly and blocked Yun Xiangxian's mouth. Yun Xianxian wanted to continue struggling, but soon found that his body had completely softened. There was no spiritual power in his body just now, and now he no longer even has his own strength. Yun Xianxian could only scold Lu Chen in her heart. This traitor actually deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors. If I had known earlier, I shouldn't have come to Yancheng today. Damn traitor, actually. Soon Yun Xianxian became confused. Seeing that the ice fairy had completely lost her resistance, Lu Chen did not continue. His lips slowly separated from Yun Xiangxian's thin lips, and then he looked down at the already emotional fairy in front of him. After Lu Chen ended the kiss, Yun Xianxian came back to her senses instantly. Her eyes were filled with water mist and she couldn't see clearly, but she could still feel the arrogance. Yun Xianxian took a few breaths and then said, "Traitor, you will definitely regret it." Lu Chen asked with a smile, "Regret? Why should I regret it? I will only regret not making you my woman sooner." Yun Xianxian now has no energy to say harsh words. She is restless now. She really doubts that Lu Chen is telling the truth. Maybe the dragon and phoenix yin yang kung fu really has that effect. If what Lu Chen said was true, wouldn't he never be able to resist in front of Lu Chen from now on, and would have to let this traitor play with him? When she thought of this, Yun Xianxian felt a little scared in her heart. It didn't seem to be fear, she had an indescribable feeling. After some inner struggle, Yun Xianxian finally gave up. She would definitely not be able to escape today. This traitor had already done this. According to this traitor's habits, she would definitely lose her virginity tonight. However, Yun Xianxian still planned to make a final struggle. Yun Xianxian looked at Lu Chen and said, "Disciple, my master has been so kind to you, is this how you, repay my master like this?" End of chapter. Chapter 604 Master, this is how I can repay you. Hearing Yun Xiangxian's words, Lu Chen smiled faintly, "Master, this is how I can repay you. It will be difficult for you to recover your strength for a while. Only a woman who becomes a disciple can you recover quickly. Isn't the disciple repaying you?" Yun Xianxian said indifferently, "Repay? It's ridiculous, you just want my body." Lu Chen said, "If master wants to think so, then there is nothing the disciple can do. But the master is right. If the disciple likes the master, he naturally wants the master to be the disciple's woman." Yun Xiangxian's purple pupils stared into Lu Chen's eyes, and she said expressionlessly, "Traitor, don't waste time, do what you need to do quickly." At this moment, Yun Xianxian no longer had any thoughts about preserving her innocence. She was completely suppressed by Lu Chen. In addition, this traitor was a lustful person, so it was impossible for her to escape. Yun Xianxian thought to herself, just like being bitten by a dog, after this time is over, she will definitely leave Yanchensh, and this traitor will never touch her again. Hearing Yun Xiangxian's urging, Lu Chen smiled slightly, "Master, why are you more anxious than me?" Facing this cold and ascetic fairy, Lu Chen actually wanted to conquer her for a long time, but the more it came to this time, the less he could be anxious. "You have to take your time. Only if you break down Yungxian's psychological defense, Yungxian, the fairy, will not leave after their affairs are over." Yun Xianxian snorted coldly at this time, and then said, "Traitor, are you planning to humiliate me? I will never surrender to you." Lu Chen smiled slightly and said nothing. Then Lu Chen leaned down again and blocked Yun Xiangxian's thin lips again. In a daze, Yungxian felt that the clothes on her body had gradually disappeared, but she had no intention to care about them at all. Yun Xianxian was restless now, wishing she could become this traitor's woman right away, but this traitor just wouldn't go on and insisted on hanging her like this. From Yun Xiangxian's point of view, Lu Chen wanted to use this method to humiliate her. She was a cold and aloof fairy, but now she has turned into such a slutty look, which would hit her hard. Yun Xianxian was cursing in her heart at this moment, this hateful traitor actually humiliated her like this. At this time, Lu Chen raised his head again, stared at Yun Xiangxian's crimson jade face, and continued to tease, "Master, do you want to regain your strength? Disciple can help you." After Yun Xianxian took a few breaths, he said feebly, "Rebellious, rebel, you will not die well." Lu Chen said with a smile, "It seems that master doesn't want to regain his strength yet." Lu Chen lowered his head again, blocked Yun Xiangxian's mouth, and continued to kiss. This time, Lu Chen's big hands moved all over Yun Xiangxian's body, making Yun Xianxian even more uncomfortable. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Chen looked up at Yun Xianxian again. Yun Xiangxian turned his head to one side and said no more. What else could she say? It all fell into the hands of this traitor, and she had no choice but to let this traitor deal with her. Seeing the look of Fairy Bing Bing, Lu Chen couldn't bear it anymore, and immediately lowered his head again, blocking Yun Xiangxian's red lips again. At this moment, Lu Chen made a move, and Yun Xianxian directly let out a long sound. Yun Xianxian cursed Lu Chen again in her heart. This traitor would die among women sooner or later, but he actually occupied her. Although he cursed Lu Chen in his heart, Yun Xianxian soon forgot about it. I don't know how long it took. In the next room, Chen Wanrong and Lin Wanyun were sitting opposite each other. Chen Wanrong was continuing to become familiar with Zhuan Kung Fu, while Lin Wanyun was also practicing. At this moment, some faint sounds came from next door. Traitor, I made a mistake as a teacher. Traitor, please let me go as my master. You bastard! After Yun Xiangxian's voice, Lu Chen's voice came again. You are still called a traitor now, but now you should be called husband. You, oh, you're dreaming. After hearing the conversation between the two, Chen Wanrong and Lin Wanyun both opened their eyes. They looked at each other, with seemingly relieved smiles on their faces. Yung Xiangxian is finally with Lu Chen, and now Yung Xiangxian will not leave them. At this moment, a world of mist. The mystic immortal sect has brought its disciples to the location of Linghu sect. The location of Linghu gate is shrouded in fog, making it difficult to see clearly. Standing in front of the mountain gate of Linghu gate, one cannot even see clearly the plaque on the gate of Linghu gate. At this time, Han Yuankai raised his hand, and a majestic spiritual power surged out of his body. In an instant, the surrounding fog was dispersed, and the gate of Linghu sect appeared in front of the disciples of the mystic immortal sect. After feeling the situation at the gate, the disciples and elders of the Linghu sect immediately came to the door. When they saw that the master of the mystic immortal sect came to the door in person, people immediately understood that the person who came was not good. A moment later, Zhang Hongyi, head of the Linghu sect, came to the mountain gate and said coldly, "Sect leader Han, what do you mean by the immortal sect?" The Linghu sect and the mystic immortal sect have always been in harmony with each other. When did the Linghu sect offend the mystic immortal sect and asked you to lead your people to attack the Linghu sect? Hearing Zhang Hongyi's words, Han Yuankai smiled and said, "Master Zhang, you misunderstood. I came to visit Linghu sect today not to cause trouble." Zhang Hongyi sneered and said, "Then what are you doing here? I don't think that you, the leader of a large sect, would take your disciples around when you have nothing to do." Han Yuankai said, "I heard that Linghu sect seems to have found a space crack and can enter Tianchen continent in advance, so I want to ask Master Zhang where this space crack is." Zhang Hongyi had a dark face. He knew that the news could not be hidden. He did not expect that the people of the mystic immortal sect would find out so quickly. "I don't know if the disciples from Linghu sect who went to Tianchen continent have established a foothold inside. If the disciples from mystic immortal sect get in, they will be in big trouble. But having said that, even if the disciples of the mystic immortal sect go in, they can only send in the disciples of the Hedao stage. They are all disciples of the Hedao stage. The disciples of the mystic immortal sect may not be the opponents of the Linghu sect disciples." Zhang Hongyi then said with a smile, "Sect leader Han, your mystic immortal sect wants the space passage that our Linghu sect has finally opened with great difficulty. Isn't this a little too overbearing?" As he spoke, Zhang Hongyi's yin-yang realm aura was released, and a pressure instantly fell on the spot. Han Yuankai said calmly, "Master Zhang, we are all victims of the world of cultivation. We have come to this misty world and lived together for so many years. What you said is really chilling. It's not easy for us to be able to leave this world. However, Head Zhang wants to hide this opportunity and let the Linghu sect enjoy it exclusively. Is the friendship between our two major powers for so many years just a joke?" Hearing Han Yuankai's words, Zhang Hongyi laughed in his heart. "Friendship? Bullshit friendship! What kind of friendship does the two forces have? The mystic immortal sect has always been domineering and never considers the feelings of other forces. There are few forces in the entire mist world that like the mystic immortal sect." End of chapter. Chapter 605 Rebel, are you satisfied now? Although Zhang Hongyi felt very unhappy with Han Yuankai, he also knew that if the location of the space gap was not handed over today, there would be a battle between the mystic immortal sect and the Linghu sect. Although the Linghu sect is also very strong, it is still far behind compared to the largest force in the mist world, the mystic sect. The Linghu sect only has one strong person in the yin and yang realm, while the mystic sect has two. The most important thing is that there are many strong people in the creation realm of the mystic immortal sect. If they really take action, the Linghu sect will definitely not be their opponent. Although the Linghu sect can also severely damage the mystic immortal sect, the Linghu sect is likely to disappear, which is not worth the gain. The reason why the Linghu sect is so anxious to enter the Tianchen continent is mainly to obtain the heavenly destiny of the Tianchen world. When the spiritual energy of the Tianchen world recovers in the future, the strength of the people of the Linghu sect will increase faster after entering the Tianchen world. In this way, the Linghu sect does not need to be afraid of other forces in the mist world. As a result, I didn't expect that the news would be known to Han Yuankai so soon. Just when the two sides were in a stalemate, a voice came from afar. Head Zhang, Sect Master Han is right. We are all forces in the mist world. How can you, the Linghu sect, dominate the Tianchen continent alone? Hearing this sound, everyone looked towards the place where the sound came from. At this time, some monks in white clothes slowly walked out of the foggy area. Han Yuankai and Zhang Hongyi frowned when they saw the visitor. The visitor was Ji Hongwen, the leader of the 10,000 Immortals sect. After Han Yuankai came to his senses, he smiled and said to Zhang Hongyi, Master Zhang, now even Sect Master Ji knows that your Linghu sect knows the location of the space crack. I'm afraid it won't work if you don't tell me now. If the Linghu sect were to deal with one sect of the mystic immortal sect, they might be able to barely hold it, but if they were to deal with both the mystic immortal sect and the 10,000 Immortals sect at the same time, they would only be crushed. If these two sects joined forces, the entire mist would be destroyed. There is no force in the world that can resist it. Zhang Hongyi knew that the location of the space rift could no longer be saved, so he said, I will tell you the truth. If you want to know the location of the space rift, there is no problem, but you must promise that once you enter Tianchen continent, your disciples will not. It will definitely harm the disciples of Linghu sect. Zhang Hongyi thought in his heart that currently he could only enter Tianchen continent through the space crack, but he could not get out. As long as the 10,000 Immortals sect and the Mystic Immortal sect tell their respective disciples that they are not allowed to harm the Linghu sect's disciples after entering, then even if the Linghu sect's disciples in Tianchen continent continue to target the disciples of the two major sects, there was no way the news could get out. At that time, the disciples of the two major sects were tied up inside, but the disciples of the Linghu sect were able to suppress them. In this way, the disciples of the Linghu sect could still occupy a large area of territory. The Linghu sect still has hope of snatching Tianchen continent's luck. After hearing Zhang Hongyi's words, Han Yuankai said with a smile, well, I promise that as long as Master Zhang tells us the location of the space crack, the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect will not take the initiative to harm the Linghu sect after entering Tianchen continent. Disciple. Han Yuankai is also an old fox. Why can't he understand Zhang Hongyi's thoughts, so he added the word active when he heard this, meaning that if a disciple of the Linghu sect hurts a disciple of the Mi Xian sect, then don't blame me. The disciples of Xianzong resisted. Han Yuankai turned to look at Ji Hongwen at this time, Master Ji, it's your turn to tell us. If you don't tell us, Master Zhang may not feel confident telling us the location of the space crack. Ji Hongwen then said, I also promise that if Master Zhang informs the 10,000 Immortals sect of the location of the space rift, the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect who enter Tianchen continent will not take the initiative to attack the disciples of the Linghu sect. Seeing that both of them had taken the initiative, Zhang Hongyi didn't want to waste time anymore. He took out a scroll and threw it to the two of them. After Ji Hongwen and Han Yuankai took the scroll, they glanced at it, determined the location of the space crack, and then turned around and left with the disciples of their respective sects. Watching their departing figures, everyone in the Linghu sect felt unwilling. They finally found the space crack and spent a lot of effort to open it. As a result, it was now given to these two sects so easily. At this time, an elder said in front of Zhang Hongyi, "Sect Master, did you really tell them the location of the spatial rift?" Zhang Hongyi said, "Otherwise? Do you think Linghu sect can withstand the joint attack of these two sects?" After hearing this, everyone fell into silence. Indeed, no matter how strong the Linghu sect is, it is impossible to deal with these two major sects at the same time. Zhang Hongyi was stroking his beard at this time, seeming to be thinking about something. After a while, Zhang Hongyi said to the elders behind him, "Tell the next batch of disciples who enter Tianchen continent to find a way to get rid of those two sects after they enter." The elders instantly understood what Zhang Hongyi meant, and then they all said excitedly, "Yes, the leader." 3 days later. Daxia, Yanchanj. In Yunrong Palace, all the maids in the palace were blushing. Every time they looked at the room where Yun Xianxian was, they couldn't help but show a hint of shyness on their faces. These maids are all perfect bodies. They entered the palace as maids and maids at a very young age, so they have not experienced anything between men and women. 3 days have passed, and the emperor is still doing that kind of thing with the fairies of Swanyu Palace in the room, which makes these maids and maids feel very shy. At this time, Chen Wanrong and Lin Wanyun were sitting in the pavilion sipping tea. They were far away from the room where Yun Xianxian was, but they could still hear some faint sounds occasionally. At this time, Lin Wanyun said with a smile, "It seems that His Majesty really likes His Holiness." Chen Wanrong said with some worry, "I wonder if Master will leave Lu Chen." At the same time, inside the room, Lu Chen looked at Yun Xianxian condescendingly, and gently stroked her frosty jade face, which was as beautiful as any other. Yun Xianxian was indeed a fairy, and Lu Chen felt that he had completely fallen into Yung Xianxian's gentle land. He even thought that he would never deal with government affairs, and then just live in bed with Yung Xianxian for the rest of his life. This also made Lu Chen understand the meaning of beauty and trouble in the TV series he had watched on Earth. Of course, beauty and trouble meant belittling a woman, and Lu Chen would not belittle his own woman because of his own problems. Unsensen really made him unable to control himself. At this time, Yun Xianxian's purple pupils were staring at Lu Chen, looking extremely calm. In the past 3 days, from cursing at the beginning, to begging for mercy later, and now, Yun Xianxian has calmed down. Yun Xianxian said coldly at this time, "Rebel, are you satisfied now?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "I should ask Master this. If I feel right, Master's strength should have almost recovered." End of chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 606 I won't listen to your sweet words. Hearing Lu Chen's question, Yun Xianxian snorted coldly and did not respond. Lu Chen continued to caress Yun Xianxian's jade face and gently pushed her messy hair to one side. At this moment, Yun Xianxian was about to say something, but Lu Chen spoke first and said, "Master, you don't want to ask me how to deal with you, do you?" Hearing this, Yun Xianxian fell into silence. She really wanted to know what this traitor planned to do with her next. In the past 3 days, she had become Lu Chen's plaything. No matter how much Lu Chen tried to toss her, she could not resist. Judging from Lu Chen's appearance, it seemed that the playfulness was over, and the next step would definitely be to deal with her problem. In Yun Xianxian's view, this traitor would most likely continue to seal her spiritual power, and then imprison her as a forbidden concubine. When thinking about his possible fate, Yun Xianxian felt desolate. He did not expect that even if he fell into a lower world and could not leave, he would end up in this situation now. She was often missed by male cultivators in the higher world of immortality, but nothing happened to her. Instead, she became someone else's plaything in this lower world. Seeing that Yun Xianxian didn't speak, Lu Chen said, "Master, look at my women, are they all very free, especially Rong Rong?" After she became my woman, she is still from Suanya Palace. Palace Master. At this time, Yun Xianxian said coldly, "What do you want to say?" Lu Chen said, "What I mean is that I will never restrict the freedom of my wives and concubines. They can go wherever they want, as long as they remember me as their husband and know when to come back." Having said this, Lu Chen leaned down and whispered in Yun Xiangxian's ear, "So master, you are the same." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian was slightly stunned, and then said coldly, "Aren't you afraid that I will never come back after I leave Yanchange?" Lu Chen gently teased Yun Xiangxian's white hair and said, "I believe master will not leave me alone." Yun Xianxian said coldly, "You did such a thing to me, how can you still have the nerve to say such things?" At this time, Lu Chen looked at your pair of lavender eyes of Yun Xiangxian and said affectionately, "Master, I fell in love with you the first time I saw you, and I also believe that you also like me." Disciples. Yun Xianxian immediately said, "Don't tell me this. I am not as easy to deceive as your wives and concubines. I will not listen to your sweet words." Yun Xianxian saw Lu Chen's intention at a glance. This guy wanted to use sweet words to keep her, but she didn't listen. Lu Chen smiled and said, "Okay, then I will proceed from the practical interests. Master, if you and I practice together, besides losing our innocence, are there any other disadvantages?" Hearing Lu Chen's question, Yun Xianxian thought for a moment, trying to find the disadvantages of being occupied by this guy. But after thinking about it for a long time, Yun Xianxian couldn't figure it out. The dual cultivation between her and Lu Chen had almost restored her strength, and she didn't feel any discomfort. On the contrary, her long-term repression was released. In the past, she always felt very uncomfortable after practicing with Lu Chen, and the discomfort seemed to be accumulated. But after this time, her body suddenly became extremely relaxed and she no longer felt uncomfortable. But the only problem is that she has become the rebellious woman. Yun Xianxian said coldly, "In your opinion, I am a person who doesn't care about innocence." It is true that at her age, she no longer cares so much about innocence. After all, she has been practicing for thousands of years and no longer has the sense of morality she had when she was decades old. But she still felt a little uncomfortable deep down in her heart. What happened to Lu Chen meant that she had a karma with Lu Chen. She would be tainted by Lu Chen's karma for the rest of her life. Maybe this happened. It will seriously affect your own practice. At this time, Lu Chen leaned down and kissed Yun Xiangxian's jade cheek. Yun Xianxian did not avoid it. She let Lu Chen kiss her. Lu Chen had already occupied her body and was still hiding here and there. It has no meaning anymore. After kissing her, Lu Chen stroked Yun Xiangxian's body and said, "Master, I am indeed a lustful person, but I am also a man with a strong sense of responsibility. Look at my disciples' wives and concubines. I have never treated them badly. Just stay with me. I really like you. I like you both physically and mentally." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian fell into silence. After dealing with Lu Chen for so long, how could Yun Xianxian not know what kind of person Lu Chen was? It was exactly what Lu Chen said. Lu Chen was a lustful but responsible man. Although he has many women, he takes care of almost every one of them. It can be said that besides handling government affairs, this guy puts all his thoughts on women. Of course, this does not rule out that Lu Chen is so kind to them because he wants to cultivate with them. Thinking of this, Yun Xianxian looked into Lu Chen's eyes and asked, "I am very curious. Are you occupying my body for dual cultivation with me, or simply for my body?" Hearing this question, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. He did not expect that Yun Xianxian would actually ask such a question. After Lu Chen came back to his senses, he said directly, "Even if the disciple does not cultivate with the master, the disciple will find a way to possess the master's body. The disciple is simply tempted by the master's beauty. Although Lu Chen said so, Lu Chen actually also lied. The reason why Lu Chen wanted Yongxian was essentially because of the system's choice. If the system hadn't shown that Yongxian's score exceeded 90, even if Yongxian had grown taller no matter how beautiful she was, Lu Chen would never choose Yongxian. There are many beautiful women in this world. When Lu Chen took concubines in the past, all the women he chose were as beautiful as gods. However, those women rarely exceeded 90 points. No matter how lustful Lu Chen was, he did not keep those women. Come down and be my concubine. Lu Chen knew very well that although he didn't meet many people with a score of 90 now, as time went by, he would meet more and more women with a score of 90. If he takes all women into his harem, he will probably be too busy in the future, so he will not want a woman who does not meet the system's requirements, no matter how beautiful she is. However, Lu Chen would definitely not tell Yun Xianxian anything about the system. Even if Yun Xianxian thought he was a womanizer, it didn't matter to him. Anyway, he was so pretty. Hearing Lu Chen's answer, Yun Xianxian glared at Lu Chen coldly. This traitor was really embarrassed to say it. Yun Xianxian continued, if you want me to stay by your side for you to play with, it depends on whether you have the ability. Just as Lu Chen was about to say something, Yun Xianxian continued, I have a powerful enemy in the world of advanced cultivation. End of chapter. Chapter 607 Rebellious Disciple, do you think your master doesn't know what you are planning? Yun Xianxian has figured it out at this moment. She has already lost her virginity anyway. Since this traitor is so obsessed with her body, she should take advantage of him. It would be difficult for her to understand the hatred in her heart unless she squeezed out the value of this traitor. Hearing Yun Xianxian's words, Lu Chen showed a smile. She looked directly into Yun Xianxian's beautiful eyes and said, Master, do you think that this disciple is not a match for Master's enemy? Yun Xianxian said, I know that there may be an immortal family behind you, but my enemy is the leader of a dynasty. In the world of high-level immortal cultivation, it is not a family of immortals that can compete with my enemy. Lu Chen stroked Yun Xianxian's white hair and said, Master, don't worry, the disciple will become the emperor one day. Then the master will not have to be afraid of anyone. When the disciple becomes the emperor, the disciple will personally get rid of the enemy for the master. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian snorted coldly and said, Becoming emperor. Can you become an emperor just like you? I'm afraid you will die of a woman before you become emperor. I have never heard that a cultivator who spends his days surrounded by women can become an emperor. Although dual cultivation does exist in the world of cultivation and has very good effects, dual cultivation can always only be a minor path, and even those evil cultivators will not regard dual cultivation as the main method of cultivation. She has known Lu Chen for so long, but she has never seen Lu Chen practice seriously. This guy only practices dual cultivation with his wife and concubines. She didn't think Lu Chen could become an emperor through this method. If he did, it would be unfair. Those monks in the other world of cultivation worked hard, fought against people and the sky, and in the end they only had a weak hope of becoming an emperor. However, Lu Chen easily became an emperor through this method of enjoyment. If only all the monks in the world of cultivation knew this. I don't know how many cultivators' Taoist hearts will be broken. Seeing that Yun Xianxian did not believe in him, Lu Chen said, every emperor's path is different. The predecessors could not become emperor through this method, because no one has explored this path yet. And if others can't do it, it doesn't mean that I can't do it either. I can understand that Master doesn't believe in his disciples, but I can promise Master that one day I will be able to stand at the pinnacle of this universe. Yun Xian almost laughed at Lu Chen's words. This traitor who lay on women's bellies every day actually said that one day he would be able to stand at the top of the universe. She didn't know where he got his confidence. Yun Xianxian asked, I will ask you again, are you sure you really like me and are not doing dual cultivation with me? In the world of cultivators, there are some cultivators with special physiques that are very suitable for use as furnaces. If you practice double cultivation with such cultivators, your strength will be greatly improved. Yun Xianxian had a special physique, so she very much suspected that Lu Chen occupied her body not only because she was beautiful, but also to cultivate with her and use her as a furnace. Although the cultivation method used by Lu Chen does not seem to be magic, no one can say for sure that Lu Chen's cultivation method must be normal. After all, she fell into Lu Chen's hands without even realizing it. Maybe it was this technique that worked. If it is really a matter of dragon and phoenix yin and yang kung fu that can make a person lose his spiritual power, then this is not a serious kung fu technique. Lu Chen replied, "Why does the master repeatedly ask who the disciple is? The master should know very well. The disciple is just a lustful person who simply likes the master's beauty." Speaking of this, Lu Chen suddenly thought of something, and then he said, "Is it possible that the master thinks that the disciple values something in the master, so he thinks that the disciple is occupying the master's body just to use the master's body to practice?" Seeing Lu Chen express his thoughts directly, Yun Xianxian said coldly, "Isn't it like this? I am the body of a fairy spirit. Using me as a cauldron can greatly improve your cultivation and strength." Yun Xianxian is not afraid to tell her about her special physique. In her opinion, Lu Chen must have known about his special physique for a long time, so he bullied her for so many days and refused to let her leave. Hearing what Yun Xianxian said, Lu Chen said with a smile, "So that's it. No wonder the master always suspects that the disciple's purpose is impure." Lu Chen then said, "Master, please rest assured about this. If I don't get master's permission in the future, I will never practice dual cultivation with master." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian raised her beautiful eyes and looked at Lu Chen with suspicion. "Do you think I will believe your words? I'm afraid that if I continue to stay in Yanchinj from now on, my fate will be no different from your wives and concubines. I can only become your plaything. I don't believe you won't touch my body." Lu Chen said, "Master has misunderstood. What I mean is that I don't want to practice dual cultivation with master. I still have to do it. Master is afraid that the disciple's purpose is not pure. Then the disciple will not practice dual cultivation with master in the future and simply enjoy the fish and water with master." Joyous. You. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian was shocked. She thought that what Lu Chen said about Nanchuangxia was that he would not touch her body. She said, how could this traitor be so kind, and how could he not touch her even if he was so kind? It turned out that this was what the traitor had in mind. That's not okay. If she doesn't practice dual cultivation, she won't get any benefits. Wouldn't it be in vain to give this traitor to that one? Seeing that Yun Xianxian didn't speak, Lu Chen stared at him with purple eyes, looking a little angry. Lu Chen continued, "Disciple has a heaven-level technique here, which is very suitable for master's practice. In order to show sincerity, disciple will now this heaven-level technique is passed on to master. As for whether master wants to practice or not, that is entirely up to master's decision." Just when Yun Xianxian was about to ask Lu Chen what kind of heaven-level kung fu it was, Lu Chen immediately transferred the content of Suan Kung Fu to Yun Xiangxian's mind, and as the content of Suan Kung Fu appeared in Yun Xiangxian's mind, Yun Xianxian immediately understood the intention of this traitor. This traitor taught her a heaven-level skill. Should she practice it or not? If you don't practice, wouldn't this heaven-level skill be wasted? If she wants to practice, then she must have a man, and Lu Chen is obviously thinking about this. It seems that only Lu Chen in this world can withstand his long-term practice of Suan Kung Fu. Yun Xianxian said coldly, "Disciple, you think that my master doesn't know what you are planning?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "Master, my disciple has said that it is entirely up to the master to decide whether he wants to practice this technique or not." Yun Xianxian said, "You are not afraid to find another man to become your master?" Lu Chen said, "Don't be afraid, because I believe that master has feelings for me. Lu Chen's words immediately stunned Yun Xian. After she came to her senses, she said coldly, "Shameless! Do you think that as long as you are a woman in this world, you will fall in love with you?" Lu Chen said, "The disciple has never had such an idea, but the disciple can feel that the master has indeed fallen in love with the disciple." End of chapter. Chapter 608, Master, is this admission? Hearing Lu Chen's affirmative words, Yun Xian was a little puzzled as to how this traitor could figure it out. She didn't think she had really fallen in love with Lu Chen, but Lu Chen did have some influence on her. Ever since she met this traitor, the figure of this traitor appeared in her mind from time to time. Some time ago, she suspected that Lu Chen was her love disaster, and she must successfully overcome it. Who would have thought that this traitor would eat him up and wipe him clean? Of course, now she can also survive the disaster. She can take advantage of Lu Chen to let her go, and then run away and never come back. Of course, whether she can survive the love crisis ultimately depends on whether her heart is firm or not. After Yun Xian came back to his senses, he said, "For people like you, I don't want to talk to you anymore. No matter what I say, you will think that I have feelings for you." Seeing that Yun Xian didn't even bother to defend himself, Lu Chen said with a smile, "Master, are you admitting it? He doesn't even bother to defend himself." Yun Xian snorted coldly and simply stopped talking. On the one hand, she did feel that whatever she said was useless, on the other hand, she did have some thoughts about this traitor, and she knew it too, so she had no way to defend herself. Lu Chen continued, Rong told me that when I am not with master, master often misses me." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xian felt a little angry in her heart. How come all the disciples she accepted were traitors, and Chen Wanrong actually told Lu Chen, a traitor, about her own affairs? After calming down her inner emotions, Yun Xian said, "Didn't that traitor tell you that I will only scold you behind your back?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "Hitting is kissing and scolding is love. If master has no feelings for me, how can he be thinking about his disciple all the time?" After hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xian knew that nothing he said would be of any use, so he simply pretended to be dead. Seeing the look of the ice-cold fairy, Lu Chen had the idea of conquering her again. Lu Chen immediately lowered his head and kissed Yun Xian's thin lips again. Ahoy! After feeling Lu Chen's reaction, Yun Xian was speechless. This traitor actually came again. This time, Lu Chen did not use the dragon and phoenix yin and yang cone just for that matter. Lu Chen just said that if Yun Xian didn't speak, then he wouldn't be practicing dual cultivation with Yun Xian. Yun Xian also discovered that Lu Chen did not use the dragon and phoenix yin and yang cone this time. Yun Xian felt a little emotional in her heart. If this guy didn't use the dragon and phoenix yin and yang cone, he would not get any benefits. Wouldn't it be in vain that this traitor took advantage of him? Just when Yun Xian was thinking this, she suddenly found that the spiritual power in her body seemed to have recovered. Yun Xian was extremely surprised for a moment. After recovering her spiritual power, she was able to push away the traitor and run away directly. However, after Yun Xian felt the feeling that Lu Chen brought to her, she could not think of pushing Lu Chen away. Yun Xian was a little puzzled as to why she was like this. Her spiritual power was obviously back. As time went by, Yun Xian's consciousness gradually blurred. At the last moment, she thought, "That's it, this traitor has taken over her body anyway, so she must get some benefits." Not long after, Lu Chen noticed the fluctuation of spiritual power in Yun Xian's body. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chen noticed the changes in Yun Xian's body, and Yun Xian took the initiative to practice Suan Gong. After Yun Xian, this cold fairy, practiced Suan Kung Fu, her aura became more and more attractive. For a time, Lu Chen's inner desire to conquer soared. He must make this cold master completely his woman. A world of mist. After the mystic immortal sect and 10,000 immortals sect learned the location of the spatial rift, they immediately sent people to the location of the spatial rift. After they sent some disciples into Tianchen continent, they tested the situation of the restriction and wanted to know if the restriction could be destroyed. However, both cases failed in the end, and the ban still existed. At this time, the sect leaders of the two major sects stood in front of the space crack and looked at the space crack quietly. After an unknown amount of time, Han Yuankai said, "Sect Master Ji, it seems that the restriction is not so easy to remove." Although the Mystic Immortal Sect and the 10,000 Immortals Sect were competitors, they still chose to join forces in order to enter the Tianchen continent. Unfortunately, the ban was more troublesome than they imagined. Originally, what they thought at first was that since the space crack had appeared, the restriction might disappear. If they took action, could the restriction be lifted in advance? But now it seems that this ban is not as simple as they thought. Ji Hongwen said, "This restriction should be arranged by a powerful person. With our strength alone, there is really no way to eliminate this restriction." At this time, Ji Hongwen suddenly thought of something, so he continued, "I heard that the restrictions in the mist world once fluctuated. At that time, people from the Mystic Immortal Sect entered Tianchen continent. I wonder if sect leader Han knew about this." Han Yuankai did not hide it, he answered directly, "My junior sister once entered Tianchen continent." Ji Hongwen asked, "Oh? A monk in the yin and yang realm can actually bypass the restrictions and enter Tianchen continent?" Han Yuankai said, "It's just luck, the restriction completely disappeared at that time." Ji Hongwen continued to ask, "Then I wonder if Elder Su has found any outstanding seedlings in Tianchen continent?" Han Yuankai said calmly, "I don't know about this." Seeing Han Yuankai's unwillingness to talk, Ji Hongwen stopped asking. Han Yuankai said at this time, "Sect Master Ji, what do you think is the probability that the disciples of our two sects will be able to occupy the entire Tianchen continent after they enter Tianchen continent?" Ji Hongwen asked directly, "What does sect leader Han mean?" Han Yuankai said directly, "My idea is very simple. Instead of giving up Tianchen continent to others, it is better for our two sects to cooperate and directly divide Tianchen continent into two, half of Mystic Immortal Sect and half of 10,000 Immortals Sect. What do you think? With the strength of the two major sects, if they were to unite, the forces in the mist world would not be able to compete with them for territory." After hearing Han Yuankai's words, Ji Hongwen thought for a moment, and then said with a smile, "Since Sect Master Han has proposed it, if I don't agree, wouldn't I be betraying Sect Master Han's good intentions?" Seeing that Ji Hongwen agreed, the two sides looked at each other and smiled. Since the two sects cooperated, it was obvious who would suffer. However, neither of them really planned to cooperate. Ji Hongwen was from Lu Chen's side, and it was impossible for him to let the Mystic Immortal Sect occupy Tianchen continent. And Han Yuankai wants to use Tianchen continent to achieve his own goals, so it is impossible for him to give half of Tianchen continent to others. Their cooperation is only temporary, and the purpose is to eliminate the third party. Once the third party is eliminated by them, the next step will be a fight between them. End of chapter. Chapter 609, Surrender for Being a Teacher. Lu Chen experienced the joy of being a faint king at Yongxiangxian. He did not go to the imperial study room to handle government affairs for more than 10 days in a row. He continued to feel the happiness that this cold fairy Yongxiangxian brought to him. Lu Chen's wives and concubines originally didn't know what happened in Yunrong Palace, but after discovering that Lu Chen hadn't left Yunrong Palace for more than 10 days, they understood what was going on. All the girls felt a little emotional in their hearts. The fairy was worthy of being a fairy. Their wives and concubines couldn't bear it in one night, but Lu Chen's master insisted on staying with Lu Chen for more than 10 days. As for whether Lu Chen will become a faint king, the girls are not worried at all. They still believe in Lu Chen. It may take a while for Lu Chen to feel fresh for the first time, but he will not be like this in the future. At this moment, Lu Chen looked down at Yongxiangxian with a weak look on his face. Yongxiangxian opened his lips lightly and kept breathing. Lu Chen had planned to get up for a long time. He had a small court meeting this week, but Yun Xianxian used her charm technique to amplify his inner desires many times. In addition, Yongxiangxian was practicing with the Suan Gong. Lu Chen felt that his whole body was being controlled by Yun Xianxian, and only that kind of thing was left in his mind. Although Lu Chen was already weak, Yun Xianxian was not feeling well either. She was completely paralyzed and could not speak a word now. Yun Xiangxian's idea was very simple. She originally thought that she had been occupied by this traitor anyway. Since this traitor liked this kind of thing so much, let him do enough. She would make him regret messing with her. As a result, she didn't expect that after more than 10 days, this guy was still alive and kicking. Now her whole body's spiritual power was so chaotic that she couldn't even operate her skills. In the end, Yun Xianxian gave up. After waiting for who knows how long, Yun Xianxian finally said, give up defeat for the master. Seeing that this cold fairy finally gave in, a smile appeared on Lu Chen's exhausted face. It was ridiculous to try to defeat him with Suan Kung Fu. Lu Chen gently stroked Yun Xiangxian's jade face and said, Master, you won't leave me now, right? Hearing Lu Chen's question, Yun Xianxian fell silent, and she didn't know what to do now. Whether it is for profit or emotion, it is very suitable for her to stay with this traitor, but she felt a little uncomfortable when she thought about the many women in this traitor's harem. Seeing that Yun Xianxian didn't speak, Lu Chen knew that Yun Xianxian was still a little entangled in her heart, so he continued, Master, if you leave me, there will be no one to accompany you in practicing Suan Kung Fu. If you persist for so many days, if you have good gong, then there will only be one disciple in this world. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian snorted coldly, and then said, Do you think this is something worth showing off? Lu Chen smiled and said, Why isn't it worth showing off? This is a man's ability. If I didn't have this ability, how could I conquer you, master? Having said this, Lu Chen continued to stroke Yun Xiangxian's jade face, and placed his hand on Yun Xiangxian's thin lips, gently stroking Yun Xiangxian's lips. Yun Xianxian turned his head to one side and said nothing more. She now had to admit that this traitor did have some abilities, and she was no match for him. At this time, Lu Chen leaned down and said in Yun Xiangxian's ear, Master, stay, this disciple needs you. Yun Xianxian didn't want to continue arguing with Lu Chen. She said directly, Until I find a way to leave this world, I can be your woman. Anyway, things have happened, and she is obsessed with this feeling. The key is that she has not found a way to leave this world, so it is okay to stay here. There is nothing wrong with being a woman who is a rebellious disciple. At least she has nothing to say about her physical fitness. She is still qualified as a Taoist companion, but she is a little too fussy. Forget it, if a man of some status in this world doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines, let this traitor take advantage of him. Hearing Yongxiangxian's words, Lu Chen smiled slightly. Although Yongxiangxian did not promise to stay with him forever, with her words, it would be much easier for him to be married to Yongxiangxian in the future. It would be even better if this fairy could be pregnant with her own child. Then Yongxian fairy would most likely be inseparable from her because of her child. Of course, Lu Chen also knew that this might be difficult. At this time, Yun Xianxian gently pushed Lu Chen's chest with her jade hand. I haven't been out for more than 10 days. I'm afraid your wives and concubines are already worried about you, so it's time to get up. Yun Xianxian once again regained the temperament of the cold fairy. Lu Chen said, Okay. After the words fell, Lu Chen slowly stood up. As Lu Chen stood up, Yun Xianxian suddenly felt his whole body relax. Yun Xianxian suddenly regretted that she should not have squeezed Lu Chen out of anger, but in the end she became obsessed with this feeling. This time I really lost my body and my heart, being controlled by this traitor. After Lu Chen got up, he did not leave immediately. He directly hugged Yung Xiangxian's jade body. Yung Xiangxian was stunned for a moment and said quickly, "What are you doing?" Lu Chen said, "It's been more than 10 days, Master, it's time for us to take a shower." Yun Xianxian curled her lips, said nothing more, and let Lu Chen carry her to the bathroom. When Lu Chen came out of Yunrong Palace, he felt like he was floating when he walked. I have to say that a woman with a score of 100 is terrifying. Especially Yun Xiangxian's charm technique can make him completely lose his mind. The feeling is simply incredible. If Yun Xianxian hadn't been the first to bear it, he might still be cultivating a relationship with Yun Xianxian now. Fairies are fairies. When Lu Chen came out of Yunrong Palace, he did not go to the Imperial Study Room, but went directly to Fenjiayun Palace. He needs to take a good rest now. Entering Fenjiayun Palace, Lu Chen found that his wives and concubines were having a small meeting in Fenjiayun Palace. Seeing Lu Chen coming, the girls quickly stood up and said, "See your Majesty." Lu Chen said feebly, "You guys keep talking, I'm going to bed." Having said this, Lu Chen walked towards Fenjiayun Palace. Seeing Lu Chen's haggard look, the girls looked at me and I looked at you. This was the first time they had seen Lu Chen so haggard. The girls sighed again in their hearts. Yun Xian was indeed a fairy. Just when the girls were distracted, Chu Yukan, Yellow Nanyang and Music Xuan suddenly felt weightless and flew directly into Fenjiayun Palace. At this time, Lu Chen's voice also came, "3 ladies, come in and let me hug." The girls didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Their husbands really couldn't sleep without a woman to hold them. After Music Xuan and the 3 girls entered the palace, Lu Chen lay directly inside Chu Yukan's soft jade and closed his eyes. 3 girls, look at me and I look at you. Their faces couldn't help but reveal happiness. Smile. End of chapter. Chapter 610 Chen and number 039, You should have a good rest tonight. Lu Chen hugged Music Xuan and the 3 girls and slept for a whole day and night before waking up. When they woke up again, it was already noon. As soon as he opened his eyes, he heard the voice of a female guard at the door, "Is your Majesty awake?" "Your Majesty is still sleeping, you should wait a little longer." The female guard said, "The information this time is more important." The female guard who changed later was different from Bai Qingqing. Bai Qingqing was Lu Chen's woman. Even if Lu Chen was sleeping, Bai Qingqing dared to wake Lu Chen up directly. But the other female guards didn't dare. After getting the information, they only dared to wait outside the room for Lu Chen to wake up. Just when the female guard delivering the news at the door was extremely anxious, Lu Chen's voice came out of the room. "What information?" Upon hearing the emperor's voice, the female guard immediately knelt down and said, "Greetings to your Majesty, long live your Majesty." Lu Chen said, "No courtesy." "Thank you, your Majesty." "Back to your Majesty, Jin Yiwei has received news that there are 2 more forces from the Mist World in Black Dragon City, one is called Mystic Immortal Sect and the other is called 10,000 Immortals Sect." Lu Chen was stunned for a moment when he heard the names of these 2 sects. He didn't expect to be in contact with his own sect so soon. When the 10,000 Immortals Sect sends people to this world, then the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals Sect can fight against the invaders from the Misty World, and it will be easier for me. At this time, Lu Chen slowly got up from Chu Yukan's arms, smiled and said to the 3 of them, "You 3 ladies, I have to go handle government affairs. I will come to serve you in the evening." Hearing this, Chu Yukan burst out laughing, and then said, "Chener, you'd better have a good rest tonight." Lu Chen's body must have been severely overdrawn. When he came to Fenjiayun Palace yesterday, he could hardly walk without feeling. Chu Yukan didn't want to see anything happen to Lu Chen's body. Lu Chen smiled slightly, "Don't worry, Aunt Chu, I'm fine. After the words fell, Lu Chen stood up, and the three women immediately stood up and helped Lu Chen tidy up his clothes. After taking care of his appearance, Lu Chen walked towards the door of Fenjiun Palace. When Lu Chen walked to the door, the female guard waiting at the door of the study continued, "Your Majesty, Commander Liang is already waiting for you at the door of the Imperial Study. He will report the specific situation to you personally." Lu Chen said, "Okay, I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Chen operated directly to the door of the royal study room. Liang Zong, who was waiting at the door of the Imperial Study Room, felt the fluctuation of spiritual power and immediately knew that Lu Chen was here. He saluted directly and said, "See your Majesty, long live your Majesty." Lu Chen said calmly, "No courtesy, come in." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Chen entered the Imperial Study Room directly, and Liang Zong quickly followed. After entering the Imperial Study, Liang Zong placed the latest information collected by Jin Yiwei in front of Lu Chen. "Your Majesty, this is the latest information from Black Dragon City." Lu Chen picked up the information on the table and looked through it one by one. Liang Zong reported verbally at the same time. As soon as the two new forces in Black Dragon City arrived in Black Dragon City, they broke out with the disciples of Linghu sect. Impulsively, those disciples of Linghu sect were no match for those two sects and were driven away directly. According to Jin Yiwei's investigation, the disciples of Linghu sect should be heading towards Daiyu's old capital. Hearing this, Lu Chen smiled, "Going to the old capital of Daiyu?" Coincidentally, Lu Zhenchu and the other two heavenly beings were waiting for them in Daiyu's old capital. It should not be difficult for the three heavenly beings to deal with the disciples of the Linghu sect. At this time, Liang Zong continued, "In addition, we found that the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect seem to be heading to Daiyu's old capital as well." After hearing this, Lu Chen thought for a moment. The disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect should have come straight to Yancheng. After they came to this world, the most important thing they had to do was to get in touch with him. Lu Chen immediately said, "Send someone to tell General Lu and the others that if they encounter disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect, there is no need to embarrass them and let them come directly to Yancheng." Liang Zong instantly understood what Lu Chen meant. "Yes, Your Majesty." Lu Chen then continued to look through the intelligence collected by Jin Yiwei. Seeing the details recorded in the intelligence, Lu Chen was a little puzzled. Why did the Wangxian sect and the mysterious immortal sect unite? What on earth did the Linghu sect do that was so outrageous that it actually caused the disciples of the two major sects in the mist world to join forces to deal with the Linghu sect? It seemed that he would have to wait until the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect arrived before he could know the situation in the misty world. Forget it, just wait a little longer. Disciples in the Hedao stage can travel relatively quickly. It will probably take less than 10 days to reach Yancheng. Lu Chen glanced at Liang Zong at this time and said, "Nothing, just go down." Liang Zong immediately said, "My subordinates resign." After Liang Zong left, Lu Chen immediately opened the system interface. He had been immersed in the joy of men and women for the past 10 days and had almost no time to open the system interface and check what rewards he had received. Although I am not really looking forward to the reward of getting wives and concubines, mosquito meat is also meat. What if the system gives me something good? After opening the system interface, a row of words appeared in front of Lu Chen. Congratulations to the host for getting a wife and concubine, and will be rewarded with the Heavenly Swordsmanship Ice Level 8 sword. The host and his concubines achieve mental communication times 100 and will be rewarded with the 7 Treasures Emperor Pill. Seeing that there were only 2 interfaces, Lu Chen asked in confusion, "System, why is there no skill experience reward for cultivating relationships with wives and concubines?" The host has mastered the ability to practice independently, and the training feedback received is far greater than the system reward, so the function of improving cultivation is offline. All right. Lu Chen also really felt that he no longer needed a system to practice the exercises. Lu Chen's eyes then fell on the Kai Bao Emperor Pill, and he directly clicked on the introduction of the Kai Bao Emperor Pill. 7 Treasures Emperor Pill, the best elixir. After taking it, it can greatly enhance the strength of the host. After reading the introduction of the Kai Bao Emperor Pill, Lu Chen didn't hesitate at all and directly took the pill out of the system space and stuffed it into his mouth. The next moment, Lu Chen felt that his whole body was extremely hot, and the spiritual sea in his brain was expanding crazily. At the same time, the old capital of Dayu, Lu Zhenchu, Xian Yuan Kaoch, and Xia Yuan were sitting on the tower, each holding a wine jar in his hand. Lu Zhenchu said with a smile, "With the help of you two, I feel much more at ease." Xia Yuan said, "General Lu is joking. With General Liu's strength, even without the two of us, we can easily deal with the intruders from the foggy world." Lu Zhenchu said, "If my strength was at its peak, there wouldn't be much of a problem. Unfortunately, the spiritual energy in this world is thin, and my strength is not as good as before." At this time, Xia Yuan asked, "General Lu, listening to your words, it seems that you are not from this world." Lu Zhenchu said, "Yes, I am not from this world. In order to find His Majesty, I followed my sect to a place where time and space were confused. As a result, I accidentally fell into the mist world, and the restrictions of the mist world behind it were loosened. I just came to Tianchen continent. I didn't expect that I would be so lucky to meet His Majesty in Tianchen continent. If my fellow disciples knew about it, they wouldn't envy me to death." Having said this, Lu Zhenchu lifted the wine jar and took a sip of wine, his face full of pride. Chapter 611 Isn't he just a heavenly being from a lower world? While Lu Zhenchu and the other 3 were drinking, a group of people on horseback not far away were quickly approaching Daiyu's old capital. This group of people on horseback are the disciples of the Linghu sect who escaped from Black Dragon City. After seeing Daiyu's old capital in the distance, a disciple said excitedly, "Finally we have arrived at Daiyu's capital. After we repair it, we can go back to settle the score with those bastards." At this time, Lei Wenda said, "If we want to repair, we can't repair it here. Let's rest for a day and head to Yancheng immediately. Meng Tian and the others have probably won over Daxia's heavenly beings now. When we arrive, we will join forces to get rid of Emperor Xia. By then, the whole of Daxia will be ours." Lei Wenda had already thought that as long as he won the throne of Daxia, he would immediately mobilize Daxia's army to Black Dragon City to attack the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect and the Mystic Immortal sect. Anyway, the ones who died were not the people from their Linghu sect. People in this world would die as well. Lei Wenda felt itchy with hatred when he thought of the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect and the 10,000 Immortals sect. A few days ago, the disciples of the Linghu sect came in and told him that the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect and the 10,000 Immortals sect were also entering this world. However, those 2 sects had promised not to attack the disciples of the Linghu sect casually. They controlled the door allows him to cause some trouble for these 2 cases. He was very excited at the time, but what he didn't expect was that as soon as the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect and the Mystic Immortal sect entered this world, they immediately united and actually attacked Black Dragon City directly and massacred their Linghu sect disciples. Did you agree not to take action against the disciples of the Linghu sect? What a bunch of treacherous villains! Now that Black Dragon City has been occupied by the disciples of those 2 sects, their Linghu sect disciples have no choice but to escape if they want to survive. There was no way, now that Tianchen continent could only be entered but not exited, it was impossible for the Linghu sect to know what happened to them. If they want to survive in this world, they can only rely on themselves. After a while, Revend and the others arrived in front of the city gate of Daiyu's old capital, but at this time the city gate was closed and the atmosphere seemed a bit weird. "Everyone in Linghu sect, look at me, and I'll look at you." Although Daiyu has been destroyed, the old capital of Daiyu is still intact, and for Daxia, the old capital of Dayu is an economically developed city. An economically developed city, trade must be more frequent. It's still so early, why is Daiyu's old capital closed? Lei Wenda frowned, and he immediately clenched the sword in his hand. Seeing Lei Wenda looking like he was facing a formidable enemy, the other disciples of the Linghu sect also immediately became vigilant. At this moment, a man's voice came from the top of the city tower, "Guests from the mist world, where are you planning to go?" Upon hearing this voice, the disciples of the Linghu sect immediately looked towards the place where the voice came from. At this time, on the tower, a man was carrying a jar of wine and pouring it into his mouth. Feeling the coercion radiating from the man, the disciples of the Linghu sect were stunned. One of them said in fear, "Heaven! It's a heavenly being." Lei Wenda calmed down and snorted coldly and said, "What are you afraid of? There is nothing to be afraid of. He is just a celestial being from a lower world. It is hard to say whether he can bring out the strength of a celestial being. Besides, we have the spirit fox formation, so why should we be afraid of heavenly beings?" Hearing Lei Wenda's words, the disciples of the Linghu sect relaxed immediately. Yes, they have the Linghu formation, so why should they be afraid of a heavenly being? Moreover, the heavenly beings in this world may not be able to exert even half of the strength of the heavenly beings. Thinking of this, the disciples of Linghu sect became extremely confident in an instant. At this time Lei Wenda looked at Lu Zhenchu and said, "Old man, since you know that we are from the mist world, why don't you hurry down and kowtow to us? If you offend our Linghu sect, there will be no good end." Upon hearing Lei Wenda's words, Lu Zhenchu said calmly, "Really? Then the mystic immortal sect and the 10,000 immortal sect have also offended your Linghu sect? Why are they still staying in Black Dragon City well now, while your Linghu sect's disciples are all scared and running away with their heads in their hands?" As soon as these words came out, everyone in Linghu sect was instantly furious. "What did you say? Immortal old man, if you have the ability, you can say it again. If you dare to talk to us like this, you will definitely die today, old man." Seeing that everyone in Linghu sect was angry, Lu Zhenchu continued, "So angry, it seems that I was right." At this time, Revender's face had become extremely gloomy, but he did not take action immediately. There is still a doubt in his mind, that is, how did this old guy know that the disciples of Linghu sect were driven out of Black Dragon City by the mystic immortal sect and 10,000 immortal sect? Revender said at this time, "Old man, tell me how you knew about this. As long as you tell us the source of your information, we may be able to leave you a complete body." Hearing this, Lu Zhenchu burst out laughing. Then he raised his head, picked up the wine jar again, and poured wine into his mouth. Seeing Lu Zhenchu's appearance of not being afraid of them at all, a Linghu sect disciple couldn't help but said, "Senior brother Lei, let's not talk nonsense with this old guy and deal with him directly." Lei Wenda didn't say anything. He always felt that something was wrong. This old guy knew the world of mist, the mystic immortal sect and the 10,000 immortals sect, so he must not be an ordinary person. Revender now even wonders if this old guy is also from the mist world. At this time, Revender said, "Old man, don't be so shameless. I will give you one last chance. If you don't say anything again, don't blame us for being rude." Lu Zhenchu finished the wine at this time and threw the wine can towards Lei Wenda. Seeing this scene, the disciples of Linghu sect thought that Lu Zhenchu was about to start an attack, so they quickly adjusted their positions one by one, and Lei Wenda he also drew out the sword in his hand. Just as the wine jar was about to fly in front of Revender, Revender swung his sword and the wine jar was cut in two. However, what everyone in Linghu sect did not expect was that Lu Zhenchu did not attack. He just stood on the tower and watched them quietly. Seeing this scene, Revender couldn't bear it any longer. He snorted and said, "Humph, just pretending." Then he shouted, "Form up!" The next moment, the disciples of the Linghu sect took out the spirit stones and threw them on the ground in the blink of an eye. A circular formation pattern appeared on the ground, and then, a huge spirit fox phantom appeared in the sky. Lei Wenda looked at Lu Zhenchu and said, "Since you don't want to tell, then take your secret and go down there." As soon as the words fell, the illusion of the spirit fox in the sky launched an attack on Lu Zhenchu, and a ball of blue flames spurted out and went straight towards Lu Zhenchu. Lu Zhenchu said calmly at this time, "You two, it's time to take action." After hearing Lu Zhenchu's words, the disciples of Linghu sect were suddenly startled. "Is there anyone else?" Before everyone in Linghu sect could react, a sword light flashed in front of their eyes. Revend was shocked. Not good. They are actually 3 heavenly beings. When the disciples of the Linghu sect fought with those 2 sects, they had suffered some injuries and consumed some strength. If they were to deal with 1 heavenly being, it would be okay, but if they were to deal with 3 heavenly beings, even if the strength of these 3 heavenly beings was no matter how weak they are, they cannot be opponents. End of chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 612. In other words, you don't have a second magic line in your body. Xia Yuan did not help Lu Zhenchu resist the attack of the spirit fox phantom. He came down directly from the tower and was in front of the disciples of the spirit fox sect in an instant, and then swung his sword. This sword did not directly break through the spirit fox formation of the spirit fox sect, but it also had a great impact on the spirit fox formation. Some of the disciples of the spirit fox sect spurted out blood after receiving the backlash from the spirit fox formation. Out. At this time, Lei Wenda quickly controlled the spirit fox illusion in the sky and attacked Xia Yuan. At the same time, Xian Yuan Koj appeared behind the spirit fox formation and blasted out with a palm, followed by a huge golden palm print. There are also cracks in the spirit fox illusion of the spirit fox formation. Revender also suffered the backlash from the formation at this time. He gritted his teeth and tried hard not to vomit blood, but he also knew that he would not be able to last long if he continued like this. Lei Wenda then threatened, "We are disciples of the Linghu sect. If you dare to attack us, have you carefully considered the consequences? When the restrictions in the mist world disappear, you will be wiped out by the spirit fox sect." Hearing Lei Wenda's threat, Lu Zhenchu and the others didn't take it seriously. How could they be afraid of the Linghu sect? Lu Zhenchu said, "You two, let's not waste time. Let's continue drinking after it's over." After hearing Lu Zhenchu's words, Xian Yuan Koj and Xia Yuan smiled. Xian Yuan Koj said, "Okay, let's end it as soon as possible." Having said this, Xian Yuan Koj gathered all his spiritual power and blasted out a palm. Then, a huge golden palm print appeared in the air. After Xian Yuan Koj took action, Xia Yuan also used the sword technique Wanjian Gazong, and countless sword shadows appeared around Xia Yuan and more. Seeing this scene, Revend knew that if they didn't show some strength, they would definitely die. The strength of these 3 heavenly beings has obviously exceeded their expectations for the heavenly beings in this world. In their opinion, even if there are heavenly beings in this world, they will not be particularly strong. But judging from the 3 people's moves, they almost have the full strength of heavenly beings. In fact, this is just Lei Wenda's illusion. The spiritual energy in this world is thin, and it is absolutely impossible for Lu Zhenchu and the 3 heavenly beings to take action at the peak of their strength. The disciples of the Linghu sect were all somewhat injured, but now they encountered 3 heavenly beings. Lei Wenda was under great pressure at this time, and he naturally felt that his enemy was extremely powerful. Revend immediately took out the spirit stone from his sleeve, and then threw the spirit stone into the formation. The next moment, the light of the formation became brighter. The illusion of the spirit fox in the sky also became larger and more realistic. Lei Wenda snorted coldly and said, "So what if there are 3 heavenly beings? The formation of Linghu sect cannot be broken by the heavenly beings from the lower world." As soon as the voice fell, the spiritual pressure of the spirit fox phantom in the sky exploded, and then it spit out 2 balls of blue flames at Xia Yuan and Xian Yuan Koj. Then, the spirit fox phantom went straight towards Lu Zhenchu. In the case of 3 heavenly beings, it is best to kill one heavenly being, otherwise the 3 heavenly beings will attack from multiple directions. If they discover the weak points of their formation will be easily destroyed. Will be breached. Seeing the phantom of a spirit fox coming straight towards him, Lu Zhenchu did not dodge. He gathered all his spiritual power and then suddenly released it. The next moment, a huge black dragon phantom appeared above his head. Seeing this scene, the disciples of Linghu sect were stunned again. One of the disciples murmured, "Spirit elephant. This is the Kung Fu spirit elephant. How can a heavenly being perform the Kung Fu spirit elephant?" Lu Zhenchu ignored them and shouted, "Go!" The black dragon spirit elephant above Lu Zhenchu's head rushed directly towards the spirit fox illusion. The next moment, the 2 sides were fighting in the air. For a while, sand and rocks were flying at the gate of Daiyu's old capital, and there was a constant roar. Seeing that Lu Zhenchu had held back the Linghu illusion, Xian Yuan Kaoch and Xia Yuan were not idle either. They once again went straight to where the Linghu sect disciples were. A formation like this that is separated from the person who set up the formation is easy to break. Just attack the person who set up the formation directly. As long as the person who arranged the formation is defeated, the spirit fox formation will be gone, and the illusion of the spirit fox in the sky will naturally disappear. Of course, there must be a protective barrier outside a formation like this, which is not easy to break through. However, facing the joint attack of the 2 heavenly beings, the formation constructed by a group of monks in the Hedao stage was simply impossible to withstand. Xia Yuan and Xian Yuan Kaoch only took 3 shots before the formation barrier cracked. Before the disciples of the Linghu sect could react, a sword light flashed in front of the disciples of the Linghu sect. In the blink of an eye, several Linghu sect disciples fell to the ground. At this time, the spirit fox illusion in the sky also dissipated. Seeing that the spirit fox formation was broken, the remaining spirit fox disciples instantly panicked. Seeing that he was really no match for these 3 heavenly beings, and knowing that they would only die if this continued, Lei Wenda immediately took out a magic talisman and said to the other disciples of the Linghu sect, "You guys are holding this person back. 3 heavenly beings, I will go to Yancheng and ask someone to rescue you." Hearing Lei Wenda's words, the other disciples of Linghu sect were stunned. Going to Yancheng to ask someone to rescue them? Are you kidding me? Who should I go to Yancheng to find to save them? Looking for Meng Tian? Looking at it like this, Meng Tian and the others might have been dealt with long ago, so what's the use of looking for them? If Revender wants them to be scapegoats, just say so, why bother with such excuses? Lei Wenda didn't care what the other disciples of the Linghu sect thought of him at this time. He directly used the magic talisman, and then his body disappeared on the spot. Seeing Lei Wenda actually running away, Xia Yuan immediately said, "I will chase him, General Lu, Grand Bachelor Xian Yuan, and I will leave the remaining Linghu sect disciples to you." As soon as the words fell, Xia Yuan immediately sensed Rui Wen's aura, and then chased after him following Rui Wen's aura. Seeing that Lei Wenda had run away, the other Linghu sect disciples knew that they would die if they continued to resist, so they all said in unison, "We surrender. Don't kill us." As soon as the words fell, the disciples of Linghu sect knelt down and raised all their swords above their heads. Seeing this scene, Xian Yuan Kaoch looked at Lu Zhenchu and asked, "What does General Lu plan to do with them?" Lu Zhenchu said with a smile, "They come from the foggy world and must know the foggy world very well. I believe that your Majesty must be particularly interested in them. They are currently lacking information about the mist world. With these disciples of the Linghu sect, they can not only know the situation in the mist world, but also know some information about the power within the Linghu sect. These disciples of the Linghu sect are all valuable, and there is no need to kill them until their usefulness is drained." Immediately, Lu Zhenchu took out poison and gave it to these Linghu sect disciples, sealed the spiritual power in their bodies, and arrested them all. A quarter of an hour later, Xia Yuan was still following Lei Wenda's aura, but to his surprise, Lei Wenda's aura was getting weaker and weaker, and it was difficult for him to determine his specific location. If he continues like this, he will definitely get lost. The magic talisman used by the opponent has such a thing, it is really not easy to catch Revend. At this time, Lei Wenda was already ecstatic. He turned around and looked behind him, and found that there was no one there. He burst out laughing, "Fortunately, I bought a magic talisman when I left the Spirit Fox sect." Just when Revender was glad that he had escaped, a woman's voice suddenly came from in front of him. "A magic talisman? Does that mean you don't have a second magic talisman on you now?" End of chapter. Chapter 613. As expected of your majesty, there will be another red one soon. Hearing this woman's voice, Revend was almost frightened out of his wits. He suddenly stopped and looked in front of him. In front of him, there was a woman with beautiful appearance and graceful figure. The woman was wearing a gauze, revealing her white belly, and she looked very alluring. But at this moment, Lei Wenda did not dare to be careless at all, because he could feel that although this woman had restrained her aura, she was definitely a heavenly being. In fact, Lei Wenda still underestimated Mu Yongzi's realm. Mu Yongzi was not a celestial being, she was a monk in the creation realm. Of course, this world has the limitations of heaven, and she has no way to use the strength of the creation realm now. Mu Yongzi ran to Black Dragon City after leaving Lu Chen. She originally thought that after the restrictions in the foggy world disappeared, she would return to the foggy world again, and then find another way to leave this world. However, in recent days, she found that she missed the Hunjun more and more in Black Dragon City. Especially when she was practicing, her whole body was restless and her mind was filled with thoughts of the Hunjun. Mu Yongzi gradually realized that something was wrong. She suspected that the reason why Lu Chen didn't chase her was because Lu Chen was absolutely sure that she couldn't live without him, so he deliberately let her go. Originally, she planned to continue to endure it and treat it as a relationship, but it became increasingly unbearable for her. She felt that if she continued like this, she would go crazy sooner or later, so she finally decided to go back to find Lu Chen. She wanted to see what this foolish king had done to her, to make her obsessed with him so much. When she was preparing to go to Yancheng, she happened to encounter the Mystic Immortal Sect and the 10,000 Immortals Sect encircling the Linghu Sect, and she also learned about the situation of the Linghu Sect. Later, she followed the disciples of the Linghu Sect to the old capital of Daiyu. Along the way, she also found out some information about Lu Qingqiu. Now she is particularly concerned about the situation of Lu Qingqiu, who was captured by Lu Chen together. Mu Yongzi wants to know if Lu Qingqiu has been eaten up by Lu Chen. Judging from the news she received, Lu Qingqiu has now been named Lu Chen's concubine, and there is a high probability that Lu Chen will eat her up. When thinking about what happened to Lu Qingqiu, Mu Yongzi felt that she might not be able to escape from the clutches of Lu Chen, that stupid king. That stupid king even dared to mess with Lu Qingqiu, a powerful clone, and Lu Chen did the same to her. But no matter what, she had to go to Yancheng. She had to find a way to resolve her inner feelings for Lu Chen. Otherwise, even if she escaped from this world, she would not be able to overcome her love and her inner demons would only get worse. Mu Yongzi originally planned to enter the old capital of Daiyu directly, but she happened to see Lu Zhenchu and others taking action against the disciples of the Linghu sect, so she found a place to hide. As she thought, the disciples of the Linghu sect did not last long, and Lei Wenda, a key figure in the Linghu sect, also ran away. After seeing Lei Wenda running away, Mu Yongzi wanted to catch Lei Wenda and said maybe I can win the favor of that faint king, and then I can talk to Lu Chen. After Lei Wenda looked at Mu Yongzi, he said with a smile, "This fairy, we have no grudges. I wonder if I can make way for you." Lei Wenda was not sure whether Mu Yongzi was from the group of heavenly beings just now, but judging from the woman blocking the road, he knew in his heart that this woman might have bad intentions. Hearing this, Mu Yongzi raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a charming smile, and then asked, "Fellow Taoist, where are you going in such a hurry?" Seeing that Mu Yongzi had no intention of giving way, Lei Wenda became a little anxious. Although the magic talisman allowed him to temporarily escape the pursuit of those heavenly beings, if those heavenly beings kept following his aura, they would catch up sooner or later. Lei Wenda immediately said, "Fairy, I am a disciple of the Linghu sect. As long as the fairy lets me go today, the restrictions in the mist world will disappear in the future. After the Linghu sect comes to Tianchen continent, the Linghu sect will be greatly grateful." Mu Yongzi smiled and said, "Do you think a person from this palace, who comes from the mist world, would be interested in those things in the mist world?" Revend was startled. "This woman also comes from the mist world? How is this possible? Didn't the restrictions in the mist world disappear? How did she, a heavenly being, come to this mist world?" Lei Wenda soon realized that this woman should have discovered the space crack a long time ago, and then came to this world before she could break through to the heavenly realm, and then broke through to the heavenly realm in this world. Lei Wenda immediately said, "Since the fairy also comes from the mist world, the fairy should know the status of the Spirit Fox sect in the mist world. If the fairy offends the Spirit Fox sect, isn't he afraid of the Spirit Fox sect's revenge?" Mu Yongzi said calmly, "Why should I be afraid of the Linghu sect? If I remember correctly, your Linghu sect only has one strong person in the yin and yang realm. Without the suppression of heaven, let alone one in the yin and yang realm. Even if a few more yin-yang realms come to me, I will not be afraid." Upon hearing Mu Yongzi's words, Lei Wenda froze. Is this woman so loud? Could it be that her realm is not just the realm of heaven and humans? How can this be? Because of the restriction, even the heavenly realm cannot come to this world. If she is really as powerful as she said, how did she come to this world? After Revend came back to his senses, he immediately said, "What a loud tone." Mu Yongzi smiled faintly, "Okay, we don't have to waste time. When Hun Jun's people come, I will be robbed of my credit." As he spoke, the bell on Mu Yongzi's ankle emitted bursts of ringing sound, and then a series of visual ringing sounds spread out. Before Lei Wenda could react, Lei Wenda found that his body could not move. Lei Wenda struggled hard, but it was useless. Lei Wenda looked horrified and quickly begged for mercy, "Fairy, please forgive me. My father is the elder of Linghu sect. As long as the fairy lets me live." Before Lei Wenda finished speaking, Mu Yongzi interrupted and said, "I didn't say I wanted to kill you, so why are you so anxious?" Revend was about to say something more when he suddenly felt like he couldn't open his mouth. Seeing Lei Wenda struggling, Mu Yongzi sighed slightly. Lu Chen was also in the Hedao stage back then. They were both in the Hedao stage. Why was there such a big gap in strength? This Lei Wenda was still a Hedao stage monk from the mist world, and as a result, he had no ability to resist in front of her. However, Lu Chen, a Hedao stage monk, not only defeated her and Lu Qingqiu, but even captured them. Mu Yongzi no longer thought about it, and then she turned around and rushed towards Yanchenge, while Lei Wenda was suspended in the air and followed Mu Yongzi's direction towards Yanchenge. When Xia Yuan arrived at the place where Mu Yongzi and Lei Wenda were just now, he felt the familiar aura of heavenly spiritual power remaining in the air, and instantly understood something. He looked in the direction of Yanchenge with a look of admiration. As expected of His Majesty, he will soon have another confidant. End of chapter. Chapter 614 Chu Yukan becomes a heavenly being. Lu Chen originally planned to deal with the government affairs that had accumulated for more than 10 days, but after taking the Kai Bao Emperor pill, his whole body was so full of spiritual energy that he had no intention of dealing with the government affairs. Then Lu Chen meditated in the imperial study room for a whole day, and it was not until late at night that Lu Chen returned to Fenjiun Palace. When Lu Chen returned to Fenjiun Palace, Chu Yukan and the others had already prepared dinner. Looking at the food on the table in the hall, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. It's been a long time since he and his wife and concubines ate together like this. Ever since they shared meals, even if it was a family banquet, they would have one plate and one seat. Lu Chen glanced at the three women in the hall at this time. Mu Zixuan, Chu Yukan, and Yellow Nanyang were also there. Since giving birth to children, their temperament has become more and more dignified and noble. The body is also a bit plump. Of course, I am fat where I should be fat and thin where I should be thin. At this time, Chu Yukan, who was wearing a green palace dress, came to Lu Chen and said, "Chener, dinner is ready. Let's eat first." Chu Yukan, who had given birth to 2 children, became more gentle and graceful, and her tone became gentler. Looking at the beautiful woman in front of her, the spiritual power that Lu Chen had not fully absorbed in her body instantly began to stir and move around in her body. The next moment, Lu Chen pulled Chu Yukan into his arms. Chu Yukan did not expect Lu Chen to be so impatient, and her body instantly lost weight. By the time Chu Yukan reacted, Chu Yukan's thin lips had already been occupied by Lu Chen. Mu Zixuan and Yellow Nanyang, who were in the main hall at this time, looked at each other and smiled when they saw this scene. It looks like tonight's meal will take a long time. Before Chu Yukan could stabilize her body, she noticed that Lu Chen's claws had entered her palace skirt. Chu Yukan felt a little helpless. Since becoming the woman of this little villain, he has become more and more anxious. Chu Yukan had no choice but to let Lu Chen do whatever he wanted. Lu Chen kissed Chu Yukan, hugged her soft body, and slowly pushed her towards the soft couch. When the two arrived at the soft couch, Chu Yukan also entered the state. Lu Chen gently placed her on the soft couch. At this time, Chu Yukan's eyes were already misty. Before she could recover, a tearing sound was heard. After feeling a chill, Chu Yukan glanced at Lu Chen resentfully. This little villain really didn't waste any time. Before Chu Yukan could say anything, Lu Chen leaned down and began to develop feelings for Chu Yukan. When cultivating a relationship with Chu Yukan, the unused spiritual energy in Lu Chen's body quickly rushed towards Chu Yukan, and then formed a cycle in the bodies of Chu Yukan and Lu Chen. In this way, Lu Chen no longer felt uncomfortable. After feeling the spiritual power in her body, Chu Yukan knew that this was an opportunity for her, so she immediately started using the Suan Kung Fu. Seeing the two people cultivating on the soft couch, Mu Zixuan and Yellow Nanyang did not continue to stand beside them, but quickly walked up. Late at night, the spiritual power in Lu Chen's body was suddenly released, and spread throughout the palace, forming ripples of spiritual power. Feeling that the spiritual sea in his body expanded more than 10 times, Lu Chen knew that his strength had broken through to the realm of creation. At this time, Lu Chen was a little unbelievable that a piece of the 7 treasures Emperor Pill actually allowed him to break through from the heavenly realm to the creation realm. It is indeed a panacea. After coming back to his senses, Lu Chen glanced at the 3 women in front of him. He showed a smile and said with a smile, "3 ladies, thank you for your hard work." If the 3 of them hadn't used Suan Kung Fu to help him ease the unabsorbed spiritual power, maybe he wouldn't have broken through to the realm of creation so quickly. Of course, this was also good for the 3 of them. At this time, Chu Yukan's body emitted a burst of white light. Before they could figure out what was going on, a burst of spiritual pressure was released from Chu Yukan's body. Chu Yukan quickly tried to control this spiritual pressure. As a result, some things in Fenjiun Palace flew up in the next moment. Lu Chen was slightly stunned when he felt the spiritual pressure released from Chu Yukan's body. This is the pressure that only the heavenly realm possesses. How can this be? In this world, don't you have to go through a test before you can become a heavenly being? Why did Chu Yukan become a heavenly being directly? Or is it that Chu Yukan has already completed the test of heavenly ways, so she became a heavenly being? Chu Yukan had regained consciousness at this time. She looked blankly at Lu Chen who was pressing on her, and asked in confusion, Chen, I, seem to have broken through to the realm of heaven and human. Let alone others, Chu Yukin herself could not explain what was going on. She had long heard from Lu Chen that to become a heavenly being, one needed to pass the test of heaven. It is what the spiritual world calls Hedao. Chu Yukin didn't even know what his test was, and as a result, he directly broke through to the realm of heaven and humanity. Although he didn't know what was going on, it was a good thing for Chu Yukin. After Lu Chen was stunned for a moment, a smile appeared on his lips. He raised his hand, gently stroked Chu Yukin's jade cheek and said, "Aunt Chu, this is a good thing. From now on, our big family will have another heavenly being, and I will be able to go out with more confidence." Hearing what Lu Chen said, Chu Yukin felt extremely happy. She always thought that she could not help Lu Chen in the past, especially after Lu Chen came to Yanchanj. Even if she gave birth to 2 children for Lu Chen, she felt that she could not help Lu Chen. It was of little value to Lu Chen. Now that she also had the strength of a heavenly being, she was finally qualified to protect Lu Chen. Music Xuan and Yellow Nanyan on the side felt very envious after hearing Chu Yukin's words, especially Yellow Nanyan. Yellow Nanyan is now a great master and has not entered the Hedao stage for a long time. Chu Yukin was originally at a similar level to her, but now Chu Yukin has broken through to the realm of heaven and human in one step. How can this not be enviable? Lu Chen said at this time, "Aunt Chu, you have just broken through and become a celestial being. Quickly stabilize the spiritual power in your body." Having said this, Lu Chen slowly stood up. Chu Yukin blushed and said, "Well, okay." As they approached, Chu Yukin stood up and began to meditate to stabilize the spiritual power in her body. Seeing this scene, Music Xuan and Yellow Nanyan both thought that was it for tonight. As a result, Lu Chen suddenly turned to look at Music Xuan and Yellow Nanyan, and said with a smile on his face, "Both ladies, Aunt Chu has already reached the level of heaven. You must work hard. Okay, let's continue." Before the 2 women could say anything, Lu Chen leaned over and came to Yellow Nanyan. At the same time, Yunrong Palace. Yun Xianxian was meditating and practicing. After feeling the spiritual power fluctuations in the palace, she suddenly opened her eyes. Yun Xianxian looked in the direction of Fenjiun Palace and murmured, "Has someone directly broken through to the realm of heaven and man? It seems that the ban is really about to disappear. Once the restrictions disappear and spiritual energy flows into this world, and after the spiritual energy of this world recovers, it will be much easier for monks in this world to become heavenly beings. There is no need for so-called tests. When the realm reaches a certain level, they can break through directly. For this world, it is not a good thing for Chu Yukin to directly become a heavenly being. This means that the restriction in the foggy world cannot last long, and the aura of this world is about to revive." End of chapter. Chapter 615 Yungxian is leaving? While Chu Yukin was meditating to stabilize the spiritual power in her body, the voices next to her continued one after another. Lu Chen didn't seem to be afraid of disturbing Chu Yukin at all. While Lu Chen was busy, a maid's voice came from the door of Fenjiun Palace, "Your Majesty, Lord Yun invites you to go to Yunrong Palace." Lu Chen was stunned for a moment when he heard the maid's voice. He didn't expect that Yun Xianxian would want to see him again so soon. He had been lying on her body for more than 10 days before. Lu Chen stopped, gently stroked Yellow Nanyan's jade cheek, and pushed her sweaty hair to one side. The maid replied, "Venerable Yun said it was about the misty world." Lu Chen thought for a moment. Since it was about the misty world, he might as well go over and take a look. Lu Chen immediately said, "Just tell her and I will come right away." After the words fell, Lu Chen leaned down, blocked Yellow Nanyan's red lips, and then cultivated feelings with Yellow Nanyan again. When Yun Xianxian heard what the maid said after she came back, she immediately let out a cold snort. She could sense what was happening in the entire palace, and of course she also knew what Lu Chen was doing now. This traitor was not even in a hurry to enter the world of mist, and was busy enjoying the pleasures of fish and water with his wife and concubines. Yun Xianxian didn't think too much and continued to meditate and practice. She suspected that the rebel should also know that the restriction was about to disappear, and the forces behind it were already prepared, so he was not anxious at all. Forget it, that traitor is not in a hurry, what is he anxious about? After all, after the restriction disappears, it is not his own dynasty that is attacked. Yun Xianxian then calmed down and meditated. About an hour later, Yun Xianxian suddenly opened her eyes. The next moment, Lu Chen's figure appeared on her soft couch and put his paws on her thighs. "Master, I heard that you are looking for a disciple. Is there anything important?" Yun Xianxian Lu frowned and said coldly, "You are not afraid of the intruders from the misty world at all." After smelling the smell of Lu Chen's body, Yun Xianxian felt uncomfortable. Yun Xianxian immediately said, "Next time you come to see me, take a bath first. Don't let me smell the smell of other women." Lu Chen looked into Yun Xianxian's purple eyes and asked with a smirk on his face, "Master, is he jealous?" Yun Xianxian said indifferently, "I don't want to talk to you about this. I just want to tell you that the restriction in the mist world may not last 20 years. Hearing Yun Xianxian's words, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. Seeing Lu Chen's stunned expression, Yun Xianxian laughed and said, "Looking at your expression, you don't know about this." Lu Chen asked directly, "Disciple really doesn't know? I don't know what method master uses to judge." Yun Xianxian said, "You were fooling around in Fenjiun Palace just now. You should know that someone directly breaks through the heavenly beings." Lu Chen said, "Yet. Of course he knew about this. After all, Chu Yukin broke through to the realm of heaven and human under him." Yun Xianxian said, "Becoming a heavenly being in this world requires a test, mainly because the spiritual energy in this world is relatively scarce and cannot accommodate so many heavenly beings, so the heavenly laws of this world will limit the number of heavenly beings. However, when the restrictions in the mist world are about to disappear and the spiritual energy of this world begins to recover, the monks in the Hedao stage of this world will not need any tests in the future. As long as their strength reaches a certain level, they can directly break through and become heavenly beings. Now someone has directly broken through the heavenly beings, which proves that the restrictions in the misty world have disappeared. Somewhere in this world already has majestic spiritual energy, and the heavenly law has directly released its restrictions on the heavenly beings." Lu Chen fell into silence after hearing Yun Xianxian's explanation. He was very happy just now, thinking that Chu Yukin had finally made a breakthrough. The results now tell him that this is a sign that the restrictions in the mist world are disappearing. Yun Xianxian continued, "I observed some time ago that the restrictions in the mist world will indeed take about 20 years to disappear, but that is without anyone's intervention. Those forces in the foggy world who want to enter this world will inevitably find ways to speed up the disappearance of the ban. Naturally, the ban in the foggy world will not be able to persist for another 20 years. Lu Chen asked, "Master, can you help me see how many years the current restrictions in the foggy world can last?" Yun Xianxian said calmly, "Take your hand away." The traitor's claws were still stroking her jade legs. What thoughts did she have to sense the restricted situation in the misty world? Lu Chen smiled coquettishly, "Master, we have already become husband and wife, what does it matter if we touch each other?" Yun Xianxian said indifferently, "If you want to know when the restriction will disappear, just take your hands away." "All right." Lu Chen immediately raised his hand. Anyway, this fairy was already his woman, so he was not in a hurry. After seeing Lu Chen raise his hand, Yun Xianxian closed his eyes again. The next moment, with Yun Xianxian's body as the center, cold air surged out. Immediately afterwards, a spiritual image exactly like Yun Xian appeared in Yun Xianxian's body. Seeing this illusion, Lu Chen thought to himself that his master might not have taught him anything real. About a quarter of an hour later, Yun Xianxian opened his eyes again, and Lu Chen asked, "Master, how are you?" Yun Xianxian replied, "According to my observations, the restrictions in the mist world will completely disappear within 5 years, and there has been a large-scale spiritual energy recovery in the area before the Black Dragon Kingdom. It's time for me to go to Black Dragon City." Yun Xianxian originally planned to go to Black Dragon City to help Lu Chen, a rebellious disciple, deal with the disciples of the Linghu sect, and then collect some spiritual stones along the way. As a result, she was tortured by this traitor for more than 10 days, but now she no longer has to think about robbing the spiritual stones of the disciples of the Linghu sect. The spiritual energy of Black Dragon City has been revived. As long as she passes there, her cultivation speed will be greatly improved. With enough spiritual energy, those spiritual stones don't have much effect on her. Lu Chen was stunned for a moment after hearing Yun Xiangxian's words. Yun Xianxian is leaving? This is not possible. Lu Chen immediately said, "Master, didn't you promise to stay with me temporarily?" Yun Xianxian said expressionlessly, "I never said such words. I just said that I can be your woman." "What? You want to restrict my movements and imprison me to be your plaything?" Just as Lu Chen was about to say something, Yun Xianxian continued, "If you are afraid that I will run away, you can follow me to Black Dragon City." Speaking of this, Yun Xianxian suddenly thought of something, so he continued, "You are now in the realm of creation. I am no match for you, and I cannot escape from your eyes." When Lu Chen appeared just now, Yun Xianxian felt the coercion displayed by Lu Chen. Although he didn't know how Lu Chen still had such a fast cultivation speed in this lower world, when he thought about Lu Chen's back, Yun Xianxian did not speculate too much about the possible forces. End of chapter. Chapter 616. It seems that this traitor is no longer able to survive. Lu Chen thought for a moment and finally decided to stay in Yancheng. Most of his wives and concubines were in Yancheng. There was no way he would abandon his wife, concubines, and children just to do that with Yun Xianxian. Of course, the most important thing is that he still has to work hard to create children, and he also has to develop runic weapons, and the entire Daxia also needs him to govern. Even though he had been in bed with Yun Xianxian for more than 10 days before, Lu Chen still had government affairs in mind. Lu Chen said at this time, "Well, if Master wants to go to Black Dragon City, then go to Black Dragon City, but..." Speaking of this, Lu Chen took a look at Yun Xiangxian's beautiful face. Seeing that Lu Chen was about to speak but hesitated, Yun Xianxian immediately asked, "But what?" Yun Xianxian felt that this traitor would not let him go so easily. Lu Chen said with a smile, "Master wants to go to Black Dragon City and the disciples have no objection, but he has to go after a month. Master must stay in Yancheng during this month. He just got Yun Xiangxian, how could he let Yun Xiangxian leave him so quickly?" Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xiangxian's brows couldn't help but twitch slightly, and then she said coldly, "What do you want to do?" Lu Chen raised his hand at this time and lifted Yun Xiangxian's chin. Yu stared at her lavender pupils and said with a smile, "Master should know best what the disciple wants to do. The disciple just got the master's body, how can he let the master leave the disciple so easily?" Hearing Lu Chen's answer, Yun Xianxian snorted coldly. She knew that this traitor thought so, but she didn't pay too much attention. Things have happened, and now she has calmed down. It just so happens that she also needs Lu Chen, a man, to practice Suan Gong. They also need each other. Yun Xianxian said at this time, "I think you are no different from those demon cultivators in the world of immortality." Lu Chen continued, "Demon cultivator?" This disciple did not pick up yin to replenish yang. Yun Xianxian said, "I am very curious. You have so many women in this world. If one day you want to leave this world and never come back, will you leave this world with your woman?" Yun Xianxian believed that with Lu Chen's identity and strength, he would be able to leave this world one day. If he leaves this world, what will happen to his wives, concubines, and children? Is it possible that he plans to keep those wives, concubines, and children in the immortal cultivation family together? Generally, the families that cultivate immortals pay more attention to their bloodlines. Women from the lower world, as well as the children born by Lu Chen and women from the lower world, are considered inferior in the eyes of those families that cultivate immortals. Even if Lu Chen really takes them all back, I'm afraid he won't be welcomed by the family. On the contrary, Lu Chen's behavior is likely to be resented by the family, and then Lu Chen will probably choose to abandon those wives and concubines. Children. This kind of thing often happens in the higher world of immortality. Some talented disciples go to the lower world to experience, and then sleep with many women in the lower world, and even have children. As a result, when they return, they will directly leave the orphans and widowed mothers. Abandoned, the son finally grew up step by step, and then ran to the higher realm of immortality to look for his father. Hearing Yun Xiangxian's question, Lu Chen said with a smile, "Of course, they are all my family. If I want to leave this world and never come back, then they will naturally leave with me. But if I leave this world for a short time, I may not take them away with me. I don't know what the outside world is like. Maybe it's dangerous, so I hope they can stay in a safe world even more." After hearing Lu Chen's answer, Yun Xianxian did not continue speaking. She felt that this traitor still had a sense of responsibility. In fact, she could usually feel that although this traitor was lustful, he was very good to his women, such as Su and Kung Fu. She heard today that all Lu Chen's women were practicing this technique. And with Lu Chen's help, several of his wives and concubines were not even warriors, and were now close to reaching the master level. If Lu Chen was purely for beauty, there would be no need to help his wives and concubines improve their strength. Just when Yun Xianxian was distracted, Lu Chen pushed Yun Xianxian down on the soft couch, then put his arms on both sides of her hair, directly pressing Yun Xiangxian's delicate body under him. Yun Xianxian came back to her senses and said in a cold voice, "Rebel, what are you going to do?" Lu Chen smiled and replied, "I can do whatever master wants me to do." Yun Xianxian said coldly, "I always like to be clean. You smell like other women. It's best not to touch me." Lu Chen said, "Then if I wash up and change my clothes, can I do whatever I want to master?" Yun Xiangxian did not answer. Seeing that Yun Xiangxian acquiesced, Lu Chen immediately stood up and walked towards the bath next to the room. "Master, wait a moment, disciple will go take a bath now." Looking at the back of Lu Chen, the rebellious disciple, Yun Xianxian was a little angry. Just now, this rebellious disciple stirred up troubles in Fenjiun Palace with other women, but now he came to her again. Yunxian felt very uncomfortable when he thought that this traitor's things had been used by others. But even if he thought so, Yun Xianxian did not run away now. After Lu Chen finished bathing and came out, Yun Xianxian was still meditating on the soft couch, but what Yun Xianxian didn't expect was that Lu Chen ended up just hugging her, sucking the fragrance of her hair, and then just like that he fell asleep deeply and did not have sex with her at all. After feeling Lu Chen's even breathing, Yun Xianxian snorted coldly. It seems that this traitor is no longer able to survive. In the past 10 days, I had been exploited by myself with Su and Kung Fu. As a result, I rested for more than a day, and then went to play games with my wives and concubines. No matter how strong my body was, I couldn't bear it. Thinking that Lu Chen couldn't bear it any longer, Yunxian felt a little gloating about his misfortune. Deserve it. Black Dragon City. A certain restaurant. The disciples of the mystic immortal sect were sitting together drinking and chatting. One of the disciples laughed and said, "I didn't expect that the disciples of the Linghu sect would be eliminated so quickly. Those disciples of the Linghu sect are not very strong to begin with, and with the help of the 10,000 Immortals sect, it will not be easy to get rid of them. In my opinion, even without the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect, with the strength of our mystic immortal sect, we can easily get rid of those people from the Linghu sect. That's right, I just can't figure out why we must cooperate with the 10,000 Immortals sect. Just when the disciples of the mystic immortal sect were talking about each other, a voice came into the restaurant. What's so strange about this? Only the union of the two sects can divide the Tianchen continent into two parts. Otherwise, the Tianchen continent will be divided into more than a dozen parts. The mystic immortal sect and 10,000 Immortals sect can only occupy a small part of the land. If you really can't figure it out, you can wait until the restrictions in the mist world disappear and ask the elders of the mystic immortal sect to see if it's better to cooperate with the 10,000 Immortals sect or to be the enemy of the 10,000 Immortals sect. Hearing the man's voice, the disciples of the mystic immortal sect all looked towards the door. End of chapter. Chapter 617. We know what to do. Standing at the door of the restaurant were a group of Hedao monks wearing white robes. It could be seen from their clothes that they were disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect. Seeing that he was a disciple of the 10,000 Immortals sect, Sha Penjiu, the leading disciple of the mystic Immortals sect, said with a drunken look on his face, "Bai Guanjiu, what are you, the 10,000 Immortals sect, doing here when you have nothing to do?" The leading disciple of the 10,000 Immortals sect said with a smile, "This restaurant does not belong to your family, the mystic Immortals sect. How come you can come, but our disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect can't come?" Hearing this, Sha Penjiu snorted coldly and stopped paying attention to the people of the 10,000 Immortals sect. At this time, Bai Guanjiu said to the waiter in the restaurant, "Where is your shopkeeper? We, the Wangxian sect, are ordering dishes." The waiter nodded quickly and said, "Guests, please come with us to the third floor. There are private rooms on the third floor." Hearing this, the mystic immortal sect disciples on the second floor and the ground floor stopped working. One disciple said directly, "Private room? Why are we downstairs and they go to the private room upstairs?" The waiter quickly said, "Dear immortals, there are enough private rooms above. If the immortals want to have a drink in the private rooms, that's fine too." There were many disciples from the mystic immortal sect at the beginning, so they simply booked the place, and they drank on the first and second floors. However, no one expected that the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect would also come. The mystic Immortals sect could drive out the others, but there was no way to drive out the 10,000 Immortals sect as well. But they can't allow the 10,000 Immortals sect to drink on top of their heads. Then wouldn't the mystic Immortals sect be a dwarf? Bai Guanjiu, the leading disciple of the 10,000 Immortals sect, ignored those from the mystic Immortals sect and walked upstairs with the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect. Seeing that all the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect had gone to the third floor, Sha Penjiu said with a dark face, "Let's go up too." Immediately, Sha Penjiu took the disciples of the mystic immortal sect to the third floor. There were more disciples of the mystic immortal sect. They went to the private room on the third floor, which was obviously more crowded. Although there were no other guests, there were many people from both sects, and it was equally noisy when they arrived in the private room. Listening to the noise coming from the opposite bakery, Bai Guanjiu smiled faintly. At this time, a restaurant waiter came to Bai Guanjiu. The waiter said in a neither humble nor condescending manner, "Sir, this is given to you by our shopkeeper." After he finished speaking, the waiter took out a note and handed it to Bai Guanjiu. Bai Guanjiu took the note with some curiosity. He didn't understand why the shopkeeper of a restaurant handed him a small note. But when the note was opened, Bai Guanjiu reacted instantly. One of the most important purposes of their trip was to get in touch with the Emperor of Daxia. He didn't know who the Emperor of Daxia was, but he knew that the Emperor of Daxia had a particularly high status, even above their sect leader. Their sect master could only be regarded as a small figure in front of the Emperor of Great Xia. Before they left the sect, their sect master personally told him many things, so when he brought the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect to Black Dragon City, he immediately sent them the purpose of people going to Yenchenges to report to Emperor Xia about the situation of the 10,000 Immortals sect in the Misty World. Bai Guanzhaihu quickly regained his composure after reading the paper given by the clerk. Not many people knew that the Wangxian sect was related to the Emperor of Daxia, so Bai Guanzhaihu did not doubt the authenticity of this note. But he didn't expect that when he randomly chose a restaurant, he would end up in Emperor Xia's dark spot. It seemed that Emperor Xia had very strong control over the world. Bai Guanzhaihu then said to the waiter, "Tell the shopkeeper that we know what to do." The guy then said, "Okay, I understand." Then the guy turned and left. At the same time, opposite the bakery, Xia Penjiu and other disciples of the mystic immortal sect were huddled in the private room with dark faces, feeling particularly unhappy. They have more disciples from the mystic immortal sect. Although they share the private room on the third floor with the 10,000 Immortals sect, it is still very crowded. Even Xia Penjiu's private room was crowded. A disciple next to Xia Penjiu said, "It's better to drink downstairs. It's too crowded up here." Xia Penjiu said with a smile, "It was such a big place, but it had to be split into two. Wouldn't it be crowded?" Hearing Xia Penjiu's words, the disciples of the mystic immortal sect were thoughtful, and they seemed to hear the implication of Xia Penjiu's words. At this moment, a waiter came in and said, "Dear guests, please wait a moment, we will serve the food right away." As soon as the man finished speaking, Xia Penjiu put a knife directly on his neck. The man was so frightened that he knelt down and said, "What does the immortal mean? I have not offended the immortal." At this time, Xia Penjiu took out a packet of medicinal powder, raised the corner of his mouth slightly, then leaned into the waiter's ear and said, "Put these things in the food and drinks of those people opposite, otherwise your restaurant will no longer exist." Hearing this, the man was so frightened that he shivered and broke out in cold sweat. "Immortal, this." Seeing the waiter's hesitation, Xia Penjiu continued, "If you don't do it, I can ask other waiters in the restaurant to do it. I believe they will be very willing to help me." The guy nodded quickly and said, "Yes, yes, I am willing." Xia Penjiu then removed the knife from the man's neck and said, "Okay, go get ready." The waiter took the package from Xia Penjiu's hand and left the private room tremblingly. But when the guy walked out of the private room, the fear on his face disappeared instantly, as if he hadn't been scared at all just now. At this time, a disciple next to Xia Penjiu asked curiously, "Brother Xia, what did you give that guy just now?" Xia Penjiu said calmly, "Nothing, just a pack of stuff that suppresses spiritual power." Upon hearing this, the disciples of the mystic immortal sect instantly understood what Xia Penjiu meant. Many things that inhibit spiritual power are colorless and tasteless, and most people cannot feel it at all. However, once you eat something that inhibits spiritual power, when you use your spiritual power, the flow of spiritual power in your body will be greatly slowed down, and your strength will also be reduced. Very greatly affected. If you eat too much, you may not be able to exert even half of your strength. At this time, Xia Penjiu said to a disciple, "Go over and watch that guy to prevent him from playing any tricks." Good. Then the disciple left the private room and went downstairs to supervise. There are all guards in uniforms in the restaurant. It is very easy for them to change something. This matter is not difficult for them at all. In addition, the disciple sent by Xia Penjiu to monitor the clerks drugging thought that they were members of the immortal sect, and no one dared to play tricks in front of them, so they did not supervise them carefully at all, so that the medicine given by Xia Penjiu ended up in their meals. They didn't even know it was in the drink. At this time, Xia Penjiu and others thought they had a chance to win, and were waiting for the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect to be tricked. At the same time, the private room where Bai Guanzhaiu is located. A waiter came to the private room with wine and food, and then handed a note to Bai Guanzhaiu. After Bai Guanzhaiu read it, the corners of his mouth raised slightly. They were not ready to take action against the mystic immortal sect, but those in the mystic immortal sect couldn't sit still. End of chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 618. I'm afraid you are here to add insult to injury. After the food and drinks were served for the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect and the Mystic Immortal sect, in order not to arouse the suspicion of the other party, they ate and drank. Hearing the voices coming from the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect in the opposite bakery, Sha Penjiu had a particularly bright smile on his face, almost crooked in smile. At this time, a disciple said worriedly, "Senior brother Sha, if we really do this, will it cause a conflict between the two sects when the restriction disappears?" Sha Penjiu sneered and whispered, "As long as those people disappear, who knows what will happen in Tianchen continent, then we will blame everything on Linghu sect." After hearing Sha Penjiu's words, the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect thought about it and thought this was a good idea. Sha Penjiu continued, "And the sect master hinted to me when I came to Tianchen continent that if something happens, with his support, we can do it boldly. The cooperation between the two sects is not sincere. The most important point is that after the disciples of both sides enter Tianchen continent, they are in an unknown state. No one knows whether the other side's disciples will really abide by their rules after entering Tianchen continent. Covenant. This is like two sects who clearly promised not to harm the disciples of the Linghu sect, but ended up chasing the disciples of the Linghu sect as soon as they entered. As long as they can get rid of all the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect, when the restrictions in the mist world disappear, the entire Tianchen continent will belong to the Mystic Immortals sect." When Sha Penjiu thought that such a great achievement fell on him, he would definitely be able to become a master in the Mystic Immortal sect, and he might even become a direct disciple of the sect master. After hearing Sha Penjiu's words, the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect present also became excited. Since they have their sect and their sect leaders supporting them, there is nothing else to say. Just do it. Thinking of this, the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect began to prepare. As long as the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect finished eating, they would take action immediately. The 10,000 Immortals sect didn't have as many disciples as they did, and since they had taken medicine that suppressed their spiritual power, it would be easy to deal with them. After an unknown amount of time, the voices from the 10,000 Immortals sect gradually became much quieter. After hearing the voices from the Mystical Immortals sect becoming quieter, the disciples of the Mystic Immortals sect immediately became vigilant. At this time, everyone in the Mystic Immortal sect had already grasped the swords in their hands, ready to take action at any time. After a while, Bai Guanjiu's voice came from the other side, "Go. Call your shopkeeper here, I want to see what you put in this wine." Bai Guanjiu's voice was extremely loud, and it sounded like he was angry. After hearing this voice, the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect were immediately overjoyed. It seemed that their potion to suppress spiritual power had taken effect. Now that it works, it's time to get started. Sha Penjiu immediately opened the door of the private room with one palm, and then he opened the door of the private room where Bai Guanjiu was. Seeing Sha Penjiu and the disciples of the Enchanted Immortal sect blocking the door with murderous intent, Bai Guanjiu said coldly, "Sha Penjiu, what do you want to do?" Sha Penjiu smiled and then said, "I heard that someone planted something in your food and drinks. I came here specifically to see if we, the Mystic Immortal sect, need help to seek justice for you. After all, our Mystic Immortal sect and 10,000 Immortals sect are now in a cooperative relationship." Hearing Sha Penjiu's words, Bai Guanjiu sneered and said, "Seeking justice? I'm afraid you are here to add insult to injury." While speaking, the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect all drew out their swords, and the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect also immediately drew out their swords. The atmosphere between the two sides instantly became tense. Sha Penjiu frowned at this time and said, "Fellow Daoist Bai, you are wrong. I came to help you, but you don't know a good heart and actually drew your sword against us." Bai Guanjiu said calmly, "Sha Penjiu, stop pretending. Don't we still know what kind of people your mystical immortal sect is? I think you just want to take advantage of others' danger. Xia Penjihu said coldly, since fellow Daoist Bai is so unkind and thinks so bad of us, there is nothing more to say. Do it. After Xia Penjihu finished speaking, both sides took action at the same time. The next moment, the entire roof of the restaurant was blown away by the messy sword energy. At this time, Bai Guanjihu stabbed Xia Penjihu with his sword. Xia Penjihu didn't take it seriously. He was about to use the technique, but suddenly found that the flow of spiritual power in his body had slowed down, and he couldn't even operate the technique. After Xia Penjihu was stunned for a moment, he quickly swung his sword to resist, but Bai Guanjihu's sword was obviously not something Xia Penjihu could resist. A white sword energy was swung out, and Xia Penjihu's body was directly thrown away. Xia Penjihu came down from the restaurant, quickly stuck his sword on the ground on the street, and then violently vomited a mouthful of blood. He covered his chest and looked at Bai Guanjihu in the distance fiercely, "You poisoned us and plotted against us." No matter how stupid Xia Penjihu was, he realized at this moment that Bai Guanjihu pretended to be poisoned. In fact, they were not fine at all. Instead, it was the disciples of the immortal sect who were poisoned. At this time, more and more disciples of the mystic immortal sect were killed by the disciples of the 10,000 immortals sect, and the corpses of mystic immortal sect disciples were everywhere on the street. Seeing this scene, Xia Penjihu shouted loudly and said, "Bai, are you afraid that what happened today will spread and reach the ears of our sect leader, causing the relationship between the two sects to break down? If the relationship between the two sects breaks down, can you bear this responsibility?" Bai Guanjihu smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Xia, why didn't you consider this when you took action just now? Isn't it a little too late to say this now?" Bai Guanjihu immediately tightened the sword in his hand. The next moment, he gathered all his spiritual power, and countless sword shadows appeared around his body. Seeing this scene, Xia Penjihu panicked, and he quickly said, "You can't kill me. If you kill me, the mystic immortal sect will definitely avenge me." Bai Guanjihu snorted coldly and said, "Sooner or later, the mystic immortal sect will go down with you." As he spoke, he waved his white light sword and countless sword shadows flew towards Xia Penjihu. Xia Penjihu quickly resisted, but to no avail. Now that his spiritual power was restricted, his skills could not operate at all. Naturally, he could not resist Bai Guanjihu's sword skills. As the sword shadows passed through Xia Penjihu's body, Xia Penjihu's whole body, the person also slowly fell down. His eyes widened, filled with unwillingness. A few days later, Daxia Yanchenj, Yunrong Palace. Lin Wanyun and Chen Wanrong were leisurely sipping tea in the yard, listening to the sounds of fighting and roaring coming from the room. "Traitor! You, how dare you do this to me? Traitor, let go of me, ah! Master, do you know you are wrong? Ah! I realized my mistake, teacher. Yungxiangxian will go to Black Dragon City in a month. Lu Chen doesn't know whether Yungxiangxian will come back often in the future, so before Yungxiangxian leaves, he decides to come to Yunrong Palace every day this month. It would be best if she could be tricked." End of chapter. Chapter 619 Mu Yungzi returns. Lu Chen's idea was very simple. If he could make Yungxiangxian pregnant with his child, Yungxiangxian would not be able to run away in the future. However, it is indeed difficult to get a celestial being pregnant, not to mention that the original strength of Yungxian is not just that of a celestial being. Yun Xianxian also realized from the beginning that this traitor would definitely use all kinds of methods to control her this month, and the result was indeed what she thought. She now feels that this guy regards her as his container, not even the furnace. Lu Chen really meant what he said. He said he wouldn't practice dual cultivation with her, but he really didn't practice dual cultivation with her. He didn't even use his spiritual power, just for that kind of thing. Yun Xianxian had a particularly strange feeling at this time. She felt that she had turned into the animals in the forest, just pursuing primitive instincts. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Chen gently stroked Yun Xiangxian's jade back and said with a smile, "Master, why don't you practice Suan Gong? You will go to Black Dragon City in a while. Once we separate, you will have no chance to practice Suan Gong." Hearing Lu Chen's words behind him, Yun Xianxian ignored them. This traitor had a good idea. If he practiced Suan Kung Fu, he wouldn't know how happy he would be. But having said that, if they don't use the exercises when doing this kind of thing, wouldn't it be just for the pleasure of men and women? As a cultivator, she can pursue this worldly happiness. Thinking of this, Yun Xianxian finally took the initiative to operate the technique, but it was not Suan Kung Fu. Suan Kung Fu was a one-sided practice and could make Lu Chen endlessly happy, so it was better to practice Dragon Phoenix Yin and Yang Kung Fu. As the spiritual power flowed in the two people's bodies, Yun Xianxian felt a little better. The flow of spiritual power made her feel that she was practicing instead of simply doing that kind of thing. Feeling that Yun Xianxian was operating the Dragon and Phoenix Yin and Yang Kung Fu, Lu Chen gently leaned down and said in her ear, "My good master, aren't you worried that I will regard you as a furnace? Why are you taking the initiative to use it now?" Success. After hearing Lu Chen's words, Yun Xianxian lay quietly and ignored them. At this time, Lu Chen gently lifted up Yung Xiangxian's white hair, and then laid his head on her white neck. Yung Xiangxian's jade face changed slightly, and her body suddenly trembled slightly. This hateful traitor! At this time, in order to divert his attention, Yun Xianxian said, "I am a little curious as to which advanced world of cultivation you come from." Hearing this question, Lu Chen raised his head slightly, then rested his chin on Yun Xiangxian's fragrant shoulder and said, "The disciple seems to have told the master a long time ago that the disciple is just from a lower world." Yun Xianxian snorted softly, "You have already eaten up me and wiped me clean, and you are still so wary of me." In Yun Xiangxian's view, the reason why Lu Chen didn't tell her was that he probably didn't believe him. Maybe Lu Chen, like herself, couldn't reveal his identity casually for some reason. But when Yung Xiangxian thought that she had become the woman of this traitor, but the traitor still didn't tell her anything, this made Yung Xiangxian feel a little uncomfortable. This traitor probably didn't regard her as his woman at all, but just treated her as a toy for venting. Lu Chen knew that Yun Xianxian didn't believe it, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't tell him that he had a system. Lu Chen then said, "Master will one day know that what the disciple said is true, but the disciple has some unspeakable secrets and cannot tell master everything." Having said this, Lu Chen put his mouth close to Yun Xiangxian's ear, kissed and blew on it, and then continued, "I believe the master will understand the disciple." Yun Xianxian snorted coldly and did not respond to this. The two continued to practice. Yun Xiangxian's red lips slightly opened, and she kept adjusting her breathing. Lu Chen said after a while, "Master, I'm a little curious. You have been practicing in the world of cultivation for thousands of years. Why don't you have a Taoist companion and you finally took advantage of me?" Yun Xianxian said coldly, "Because I have never met such a despicable rebel like you before. Only you are so domineering." Lu Chen said with a smile, "Master, what are you talking about? This disciple helped the master regain his strength. The master must give the disciple some reward, right?" Yun Xianxian breathed out slightly, "Hey, I am too lazy to talk to you about this. It's all like this now, and it's useless to say more, since it's already happened." Yun Xianxian then stopped talking and practiced seriously. Seeing Yun Xianxian practicing so seriously, Lu Chen stopped doing it. He worked so hard, but she got better at it. Lu Chen then gave Yung Xiangxian strength. Soon, Lin Wanyun and Chen Wanrong, who were sitting in the pavilion outside sipping tea, heard Yun Xiangxian's voice coming out again. While Lu Chen was struggling hard, a female guard came to Yunrong Palace. "Your Majesty, there are guests from Black Dragon City." Hearing this, the sounds in the room suddenly stopped, and Yun Xian finally got a chance to take a breather. Hearing the voice of the female guard, Lu Chen also guessed who the so-called guest was. It was obviously a disciple of the 10,000 Immortals sect who came to report to him about the situation of the 10,000 Immortals sect. Lu Chen immediately said, "Go and tell the guests in Black Dragon City and ask them to wait for me in the Imperial Study. I will be here soon." "Yes." The female guard saluted towards the room where Lu Chen was, then turned and left Yunrong Palace. After Lu Chen finished speaking, he did not leave. Instead, he continued to press Yun Xian. Yungxiangxian said at this time, Ni disciple, why don't you get up?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "Why are you in such a hurry? Master's training has just begun, and the disciple is gone like this. Wouldn't it be very sad for master?" Then Lu Chen continued to work. At the same time, on a certain street in Yanqing, a woman in light gauze walked towards the Jinyue prison. Behind the woman was a sack. There seemed to be some kind of animal inside the sack, which was constantly twisting. Not long after, the woman arrived at the gate of Jinyue's prison. After seeing the woman, the Jinyue soldiers immediately blocked her way. "Who is this?" At this moment, Qin Yushan came out of the prison. When he saw the woman coming, Qin Yushan quickly saluted and said, "I have seen concubine Mu." Qin Yushan had met Mu Yongzi when he was in the Great Dynasty, so he recognized Mu Yongzi at a glance. Although he also knew that Mu Yongzi ran away when he was in Daqian, Lu Chen had already canonized Mu Yongzi. Then Mu Yongzi is concubine Mu. When they see Mu Yongzi, they all need to salute. After hearing Qin Yushan's words, the soldiers at the gate of the prison reacted instantly. They also immediately saluted Mu Yongzi and said, "See concubine Mu." Mu Yongzi coughed and said, "No courtesy." Mu Yongzi felt a little embarrassed. She ran away not long after she was canonized. As a result, Lu Chen's subordinates had to bow to her when they saw her. End of chapter. Chapter 620. How good do you think your end can be? Qin Yushan glanced at the sack behind Mu Yongzi and asked curiously, "Concubine Mu, I dare to ask, what is in the sack behind you?" Mu Yongzi then waved his hand and the sack flew in front of Qin Yushan. The next moment, the sack opened and the person inside was revealed. There was a big man inside the sack. The man was tied up and his mouth was gagged. He could only make a sound of "aha." This. Qin Yushan naturally did not recognize this person, so Mu Yongzi immediately said, "This is the leader of the Linghu sect who came to invade this world. The other disciples of Linghu sect should have been caught by your people, but he escaped. It took me a lot of effort to catch him." After hearing this, Qin Yushan immediately said, "Concubine Mu, you have made great achievements this time, and your majesty will definitely reward you generously." Mu Yongzi said, "The heavy reward will be waived. This is what I should do. Okay, I'll go back first." Having said this, Mu Yongzi was ready to go to the palace, but she soon discovered another problem. When she was canonized, she was in the Daqian Palace. Now she is in the Yanqing Palace. How does she enter the palace, or where should she go? Seeing Mu Yongzi stop, Qin Yushan quickly understood what Mu Yongzi was thinking now, and he said directly, "Concubine Mu, after you are canonized, the palace has prepared a residence for you, my subordinates let someone take you there." Upon hearing this, Mu Yongzi turned his head and said indifferently, "That's very good." Qin Yushan then asked someone to call a female Jinyi guard soldier who often delivered news, and led Mu Yongzi to Mu Yongzi's palace. When Mu Yongzi entered the palace, she immediately released her spiritual power to find out Lu Qingkai's location. Soon, she sensed the location of Lu Qingkai's aura. Seeing Lu Qingkai sitting in the pavilion meditating and practicing, and not seeming to be imprisoned, Mu Yongzi asked the Jinyue soldier who was leading the way, "How many times has concubine Lu slept with her since she came to the palace?" Hearing this question, the female Jinyaiwei soldier was stunned for a moment, and then she replied, "My subordinates don't know much about the inner palace." After hearing the soldier's answer, Mu Yongzi said, "Forget it, I will ask in person later." Speaking of this, Mu Yongzi suddenly thought of something, so he continued to ask, "Can I go directly to the palace where concubine Lu is?" The female soldier replied, "Of course, you can go anywhere in the palace, and your bedroom is next to concubine Liu's." Mu Yongzi thought for a moment, and then said, "Then take me directly to concubine Liu's palace." "Yes." Then the soldiers took Mu Yongzi to Lu Qingkai's palace. At this time, Lu Qingkai in the pavilion slowly opened her eyes. She had sensed Mu Yongzi's spiritual power just now. Lu Qingkai snorted coldly and said, "Now I know I'm back. Do you really want to be tortured by that man?" But having said that, that bastard really got it right. Lu Chen had told her in front of her that Mu Yongzi would come back sooner or later. She didn't believe it at the time, but Mu Yongzi actually came back today. How long has it been? After a year, Mu Yongzi came back. Not long after, Mu Yongzi appeared outside Lu Qingkai's palace. After seeing Mu Yongzi, Lu Qingkai said coldly, "I said that I smelled a smell of fox. It turns out you are back." Hearing this, Mu Yongzi smiled lightly, and then said, "Why is concubine Lu so angry? Aren't you happy to see our allies again?" Lu Qingkai ignored Mu Yongzi's words and asked directly, "What are you doing here? What? Do you really want to be pinned down on the bed and played with by that man?" Mu Yongzi smiled and said, "What do you mean by this? Have you already been played by him like this? So, you have lost your innocence. It seems that our Majesty is really brave enough to even dare to do something to a powerful clone like you." Lu Qingkai sneered and said, "Now that you are back, how do you think your end will be better? From the moment you stepped into Yanchenge, he must have known that you were back. There is no way you can escape this time." Lu Qingkai couldn't wait to see the scene where Mu Yongzi was fucked to death by Lu Chen. Hearing Lu Qingkai's words, Mu Yongzi showed a nonchalant look and said, "Since I'm back, I don't have to worry about these things. Don't scare me either." Lu Qingkai chuckled lightly and said, "Then why are you here looking for me? Your bedroom is next door, not here. Go to the next door quickly. Maybe that kind of guy is already waiting for you next door. If you dare to run back, it proves that you are ready. Go and enjoy it." Hearing Lu Qingkai's words, Mu Yongzi suddenly felt some fear in her heart. She knew that Lu Qingkai definitely didn't want to see her good. This woman wanted to see herself being fucked by that man so much, which meant that that kind of thing was definitely not a good thing, at least not a good thing for Lu Chen. How terrible is this faint king that he actually makes Lu Qingkai, a powerful clone, think that kind of thing is a kind of torture. Mu Yongzi felt regretful around her now, and she wanted to run away again. But when she thought of the hot feeling on her body every time she practiced, and the image of Lu Chen that appeared in her mind from time to time, she encouraged herself in her heart not to give in. Once she gave in, even if she really ran away, it won't be long before she comes back again. That man must have done something to her. Thinking of this, Mu Yongzi smiled sweetly and said calmly to Lu Qingkai, "Concubine Lu, I have a question I want to ask you about." Lu Qingkai said indifferently, "Problem? What problem? Do you want to know his abilities as a man?" "I have no comment, you will understand after experiencing it yourself." Mu Yongzi said, "That's not true. I just want to know how many times you have slept with me since you came to Yanchenge." Lu Qingkai replied calmly, "Why, you haven't become his woman and you are already thinking about competing for his favor. Then you have to work hard. He has so many wives and concubines, and it's not your turn to serve him every day." At this point, Lu Qingkai didn't want to continue talking nonsense with Mu Yongzi. He directly said to the maid in the yard, "Xiaoa, see you off." Seeing Lu Qingkai's indifference, Mu Yongzi chuckled, said nothing more, and then turned around and left Lu Qingkai's palace. Looking at Mu Yongzi's enchanting back as she left, Lu Qingkai couldn't help but think, twist it. I'll see if you can still twist your waist in a few days. Yunrong Palace. After Lu Chen let out a long sigh, he became energetic. Now that he was in the realm of creation, he could easily sense that Mu Yongzi had entered the palace. The corners of Lu Chen's mouth raised slightly, and then he touched Yongxiangxian's jade face and said, Master, have a good rest. Disciple goes to work first. End of chapter. Chapter 621. Oh, isn't this my lady Yongzi? After Lu Chen slowly stood up, Yun Xianxian felt as if her body was falling apart. She, a celestial being, could not bear it. This traitor who deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors really treated her as a plaything. Hateful. When Lu Chen got up, he found Yun Xiangxian's cold and blushing cheeks staring at him viciously, as if he wanted to tear him into pieces. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen said with a smile, What's the expression on master's face? This disciple has worked so hard for so long, but master doesn't even say a word of thanks, and still stares at the disciple like this. Yun Xianxian didn't speak. She didn't want to say anything later. The traitor came back and pushed her down on the soft couch, and then tossed her again. Lu Chen gently stroked Yongxiangxian's jade cheeks, then stroked her silver-white hair. Yongxiangxian didn't hide away. They were all eaten up and wiped clean by this traitor, and there was nothing wrong with it. So easy to avoid. Yun Xiangxian's skin is as white as snow, with a faint blush in the white snow. She looks extremely attractive, and her whole body is like a work of art. Seeing the fairy below him pretending to be indifferent, but with a red cloud on his face, Lu Chen couldn't wait to continue. However, he still controlled himself. There were still guests waiting for him. Not only did he have to listen to the report from the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect, but he also wanted to meet the lady who had escaped from the marriage and came back on her own. At this time, Lu Chen gently leaned down and kissed Yun Xiangxian's thin lips. Yongxiangxian still did not struggle and allowed Lu Chen to kiss her. After the kiss, Lu Chen stood up, looked into Yun Xiangxian's beautiful eyes, and said with a smile, Master, please wait for me for a while. When I finish handling the matter, I will come to practice with you. After he finished speaking, Lu Chen slowly asked the maid in the room to dress him. Not long after, Lu Chen arrived at the Imperial Study Room. Outside the Imperial Study Room, there were already several people in white clothes waiting. Lu Chen directly transferred to the Imperial Study Room, so those few people didn't know that Lu Chen had arrived at the Imperial Study Room. They were still waiting anxiously outside the Imperial Study Room. When they set out, Bai Guanjiu had specially warned them that the Emperor of Daxia had a special status. Meeting the Emperor of Daxia was like meeting the master of the 10,000 Immortals sect, so they were very nervous. Just when the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect were thinking about when they would see Lu Chen, a female guard came out and said, His Majesty has arrived, please go in. Upon hearing this, several disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect immediately entered the Imperial Study Room. When they entered the Imperial Study and saw Lu Chen, they were stunned for a moment. On the way to Yancheng, they had been in a hurry and had not inquired about the Emperor of Daxia. Originally, in their impression, the Emperor of Daxia was an old man, but they did not expect that the Emperor of Daxia was actually so young. This made them very curious as to why Bai Guanjiu said that the Emperor of Daxia had a higher status than the sect leader. After a few people came to their senses, they quickly saluted Lu Chen and said, Disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect, pay homage to your Majesty. Long live your Majesty! Long live your Majesty! Lu Chen said calmly, Get up. Thank you, your Majesty. After they stood up, Lu Chen looked at the leading disciple of the 10,000 Immortals sect and said, Tell me, what is the situation in the misty world now? Where can the comprehensive strength of the 10,000 immortals sect rank in the mist world? Hearing this question, the leading disciple Yu Wengang replied, Your Majesty, there are currently 8 known major sects in the mist world, among which are 10,000 immortals sect, Mystic Immortals sect and Linghu sect are the strongest. In terms of strength, the 10,000 immortals sect and the Mystic Immortals sect are equally powerful. Both sides have 2 strong men in the yin and yang realm. However, since there has not been a large-scale head-on conflict between the 2 sides, who is stronger? Some subordinates are not good enough to draw conclusions without authorization. Speaking of this, Yu Wengang continued, as for the small forces, there are quite a few. The mist world is very large, and the space in the mist world is unstable. There are always fragments of other worlds falling into the mist world, bringing great influence to the mist world. Come more forces and practitioners. Lu Chen thought for a while, and it seemed that the troubles in the foggy world could not be solved in a short while. Even if all the current forces in the mist world are defeated, there will still be forces from other worlds falling into the mist world. The mist world is a place where time and space are turbulent. No one can say whether a more powerful force will appear in the foggy world in the future. At this time, Yu Wengang and others looked at Lu Chen, waiting for Lu Chen to ask more about the 10,000 immortals sect. In their opinion, Lu Chen, the emperor of Great Xia, should not know about the 10,000 immortals sect. As a result, Lu Chen said at this moment, You guys have come a long way. It's hard work. Go down and rest. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yu Wengang and others were stunned. Is this the end of the question? Just such a question? Although they were puzzled, Yu Wengang and others did not continue. Yu Wengang immediately led other disciples to salute and said, My subordinates resign. Then Yu Wengang and others turned around and left the imperial study. Lu Chen originally wanted to ask something about the Mystic Immortal sect, but then he thought about it. These disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect stay in the 10,000 Immortals sect every day, even if they know about the 10,000 Immortals sect. Some things are just known to everyone in the foggy world. If you ask them about the mystical Immortal sect, I'm afraid they don't know as much as Wu Yunwan and Li Qingguo. If you want to ask about the current situation of the Mystic Immortal sect, you still have to ask the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect. He has already asked Jin Yiwei to send a message to the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect in Black Dragon City. It should not be long before a disciple of the Mystic Immortal sect is send them to Yanqinsh, and then slowly interrogate the disciples of the Mystic Immortal sect. After the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect left the imperial study room, Lu Chen used his apparition again and went directly to Mu Yongzi's palace. At this time, Mu Yongzi stood in the hall and looked around. For some reason, she suddenly felt a strange sense of crisis in her heart. She always felt that Lu Chen would suddenly rush out from somewhere and kill her directly. Pressed. At this time, Mu Yongzi thought in her mind that as long as she found out what that guy had done to her, she would leave Yanqinj immediately and find another way to solve the problem. What she wanted to know most now was not the pharmacy where the disease was treated, but the cause of the disease. She always felt that the cause of the disease was caused by Lu Chen. As long as she figured out what the cause was, the world of cultivation was so vast, she could always find a solution. Just when Mu Yongzi was distracted, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind, Let me see, who is back? Hey, isn't this my lady Yongzi? Hearing this, Mu Yongzi turned around suddenly. Seeing Lu Chen again, Mu Yongzi's mind suddenly froze, and she suddenly had the idea of getting close to Lu Chen. Lu Chen said with a smile on his face, I thought my wife Yongzi would never come back, but I didn't expect that she would come back on her own after only a year. End of chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 622, Isn't this dress more pleasing to His Majesty? Hearing Lu Chen's words, Mu Yongzi always felt that Lu Chen was deliberately humiliating her, which made Mu Yongzi even more certain that this guy must have done something to her body. Otherwise, How could he be so relieved to let her leave in the first place? He even said before that even if he ran away, he would return to him sooner or later. At that time, this guy must have used something on her, but he didn't know it. Mu Yongzi twisted her waist and turned around slowly, then showed a cold and charming smile. Your Majesty, what a good trick! Lu Chen asked with a confused look. Mean? What method? Seeing Lu Chen pretending not to know anything, Mu Yongzi chuckled and said, Your Majesty is really good at pretending. Don't you know what Your Majesty has done to me? Lu Chen continued to pretend that he didn't know anything. What did I do to you? How come I don't know what I did to you? We are not even married. Seeing that Lu Chen continued to pretend to be stupid, Mu Yongzi said directly, Your Majesty, you better stop pretending and tell me directly whether you poisoned me, planted a poison on me, or cast some kind of curse on me. Lu Chen said calmly, What do you mean? I've never done any of those things. Mu Yongzi said, I don't think that woman Lu Qingkai will stay by His Majesty's side willingly. There are so many wives and concubines around His Majesty, but in the end, everyone is obedient to Your Majesty. It is said that Your Majesty has not used anything against them. I don't believe in the means of control. Hearing Mu Yongzi's words, the corners of Lu Chen's mouth raised slightly. This woman was indeed quite smart, and she could actually guess the tricks he used. But having said that, there are many smart women. There is no shortage of smart women in his harem, like Li Qingguo, Yun Xianxian and others have long guessed that he used some kind of method on them, but now she no longer cares. And they still haven't guessed what he did to them. Seeing that Lu Chen smiled but didn't speak, Mu Yongzi said with a full smile, Why, I've been right, and I don't know how to make excuses. Lu Chen smiled and said, Kia? Why should I quibble? Mu Yongzi was immediately stunned by Lu Chen's words. Yes, this guy has used tricks on his own women. Does he need to make any excuses? Anyway, his women have no ability to resist. They can only be his women obediently, be played by him, and give birth to him. Parenting. Lu Chen walked towards Mu Yongzi at this time and said as he walked, No matter what methods I use on you, you are already my woman now. Can you change anything? Seeing Lu Chen getting closer, Mu Yongzi's heart trembled, and then he was so frightened that he backed away. Mu Yongzi retreated towards the other side of the hall, and the direction she retreated was exactly where the soft couch was. Seeing her retreating, Lu Chen also walked forward, forcing her to continue retreating. Mu Yongzi forced a smile and said, Why do I feel that you are so like an evil cultivator? Lu Chen said, There seems to be no difference between evil cultivators and upright cultivators. Have those upright cultivators in your cultivation world never done anything immoral? At this point, Lu Chen paused. Oh, no, in the eyes of decent monks, I'm afraid they have the final say on morality and immorality. After hearing what Lu Chen said, Mu Yongzi continued to retreat. Now she really felt that Lu Chen was an evil cultivator. But having said that, if Lu Chen was an evil cultivator, he would not take the initiative to destroy the demon. From this point of view, Lu Chen was still an upright cultivator. It's just that his methods are indeed a bit disgusting. This guy actually uses methods on his women to make them unable to live without him. Mu Yongzi suddenly thought that now that he had fallen into Lu Chen's tricks, wouldn't it mean that he couldn't do without this guy? This is trouble. She had to find a way to find out how to remove the influence. Mu Yongzi immediately said, Your Majesty, you are now the only emperor of Tianchen continent and have supreme power. There are still those small means to restrict your woman. With great strength and so much power in her hands, that woman is not allowed to take off her clothes when she sees you. Why use those shameful means? After hearing Mu Yongzi's words, Lu Chen said, Oh? So you will take off your clothes when you see me? Why haven't I seen you take off your clothes yet? Mu Yongzi smiled and said, Isn't this dress more pleasing to your Majesty? Why don't you take it off? Mu Yongzi's clothes have always been relatively revealing, with her white neck, straight shoulders, flat belly and voluptuous waist all exposed. Moreover, she was wearing a gauze dress, and her slender white legs were looming, making people want to explore. It's not that Mu Yongzi specially dressed like this to meet Lu Chen, she was just used to it. In her original world, she always dressed like this. She just liked to dress so cool and relaxed. Hearing Mu Yongzi's answer, Lu Chen smiled and said, I didn't expect you, my beloved, to know that looming is the most attractive. Then if you run around wearing this every day, aren't you seducing other men? As he spoke, Lu Chen's pace suddenly quickened, and Mu Yongzi was forced to take a few steps back quickly. As a result, she retreated directly to the edge of the soft couch. She accidentally bumped into the edge of the soft couch and fell directly onto the soft couch. On the couch, Mu Yongzi stood up quickly and planned to escape from this place. She felt that if she continued like this, she might lose her virginity. However, as soon as she stood up, Lu Chen grabbed her wrist, and then directly pressed her down on the soft couch, looking down at Mu Yongzi, a woman full of exotic charm. Mu Yongzi's calm expression disappeared, and the smile on her face solidified. She said in a panic, Your Majesty, I helped you capture a disciple of the Linghu sect before. That disciple was sent by the Linghu sect. The leader of the invasion of this world. Looking at the great achievements I have made, can Your Majesty release the control over me? Hearing Mu Yongzi's words, Lu Chen raised his hand, hooked her delicate chin, looked into her soft eyes and said, Do you think I would let a beauty like you go because of such a small thing? Hearing Lu Chen's joking words, Mu Yongzi was slightly startled. Yes, this lustful person would stuff her into his harem whenever he saw a pretty girl. Now that she had thrown herself into a trap, how could this guy let her go? Mu Yongzi suddenly felt regretful, but regretting was useless. If she was given another chance to choose, she would eventually choose to return to Yancheng to surrender. There was no way, Lu Chen had already controlled her mentally, and there was a big problem with her cultivation. If the control was not released, she would probably go crazy. End of chapter. Chapter 623 Lu Chen, you bastard! Knowing that it was impossible for Lu Chen to take the initiative to release the control, Mu Yongzi thought to himself that it seemed that he could only use the last method. That is to please Lu Chen, including but not limited to voluntarily dedicating herself. Although she will lose her innocence, as the current situation continues, she will still become the plaything of Lu Chen, a lustful person, so it is better to voluntarily sacrifice herself. She was able to comfort herself that she took the initiative to sacrifice herself, and was not forced by Lu Chen. She was not Lu Chen's plaything, but she slept with Lu Chen. After all, she is a monk who has lived for so many years. Although she also values innocence, she no longer has the mentality of a little girl when she was a child. For her, her own life is definitely more important than her innocence. After communicating, Mu Yongzi smiled and said to Lu Chen, Your Majesty, I can serve you, but can you release your control over me? If you have been controlling my body, how do you know if I am voluntary? Don't you want to see what I will be like when I take the initiative? If you keep controlling your woman, you will never realize the happiness that a woman brings to you when she takes the initiative. Do you think I am right? Hearing Mu Yongzi's seductive words, the corners of Lu Chen's mouth slightly raised. This woman had quite a beautiful thought. Then he said, Okay, I can release my control on you, but only after you become my woman. Seeing that Lu Chen agreed, Mu Yongzi felt a little excited. Although he knew that he might have to lose his innocence next, but for the sake of freedom, he should just throw away his innocence. The key is. Mu Yongzi took a look at Lu Chen at this time. Lu Chen was also one of those handsome and extraordinary men. She didn't suffer too much if she handed over her body to Lu Chen, even though this lustful man had already touched many girls. There was blood on his wife, but this guy loved bathing, so she treated him as if he was clean. After comforting himself in his heart, Mu Yongzi made preparations. Mu Yongzi then said, "Then, Your Majesty, please help me release my control today." "I will definitely, Before Mu Yongzi finished speaking, Lu Chen leaned down and kissed Mu Yongzi's red lips. Mu Yongzi had no idea that Lu Chen would be so impatient. But it doesn't matter, there are some things that need to be done sooner or later. With Lu Chen's kiss, Mu Yongzi felt increasingly weak and confused. Pressing Mu Yongzi's soft and delicate body, Lu Chen felt what it meant to be passionate. Mu Yongzi's body was very soft, and he felt very comfortable when pressed. Of course, Lu Chen's women's bodies are relatively soft. Perhaps this was the first time Lu Chen had such close contact with Mu Yongzi, so it was still very fresh. At this time, Mu Yongzi was already flirtatious. She didn't expect Lu Chen's kiss to be so intense. It was just a kiss, and she felt that she had completely fallen, and it was even difficult to breathe. Mu Yongzi was already very anxious about her situation. At this time, she already felt that her body could not use her spiritual power. In other words, under the current situation, Lu Chen, a lecherous man, could do whatever he wanted to her, and she had no power to resist. This also made Mu Yongzi certain that Lu Chen did have a way to control them. Otherwise, why would she feel weak every time she came into contact with this lustful man's body, and would have the desire to fall in love with him? Idea. When she thought about her fate, Mu Yongzi sighed slightly in her heart, but she felt that it was all worth it. As long as she could release the control, she would be able to leave this lustful man completely. When she goes to the misty world, even if this lustful man wants to find her, it will not be so easy. What Mu Yongzi didn't know at this time was that Lu Chen had no intention of eating her up right from the beginning. His idea was simple. Since Mu Yongzi was so proactive, he would let Mu Yongzi be more proactive. First, he would give Mu Yongzi some sweet treats, and then hang on to her. In the end, she couldn't bear it anymore and would come to beg him. For Mu Yongzi, an exotic fairy, Lu Chen had no intention of getting down to business with her all at once. After the two kissed wildly for a while, Mu Yongzi could no longer suppress her inner impulse. A pair of jade hands touched Lu Chen's body. However, Lu Chen did not give her this chance. He grabbed Mu Yongzi directly. Yun Xi then raised her hands and pressed her two wrists with one hand, so that she could not continue to touch them. But during this process, Lu Chen's kiss still did not break, and one of his hands was placed on her flat belly. Feeling Lu Chen's touch, Mu Yongzi suddenly felt that her whole body was on fire. She was very uncomfortable now. She felt like she had been poisoned by aphrodisiac. If she could not get relief, she might die. Mu Yongzi twisted her waist slightly at this time, as if she was provoking Lu Chen, hoping that Lu Chen would do something to her. Unfortunately, Lu Chen remained unmoved and just kissed her briefly. Just when Mu Yongzi was about to reach her limit, Lu Chen suddenly let go of Mu Yongzi's arms, then got up from her and stood beside the soft couch. Superior. Mu Yongzi was stunned. She looked at Lu Chen with charming eyes and said, "Your Majesty." "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "My beloved, I'm really sorry. I suddenly remembered that I still have some things to deal with. I'll leave it at that for today. I'll come back to you in a few days." After the words fell, Lu Chen disappeared without a trace. When he saw the empty hall, Mu Yongzi was stunned. After she came to her senses, she was weak and cursed angrily, Lu Chen, you bastard." Mu Yongzi was not a fool. How could she not see what Lu Chen was thinking? This bastard just wanted to play with her, tease her, and humiliate her. Hateful. Even if Mu Yongzi got angry again, Lu Chen would run away. She had no choice but to squirm on the bed alone. After Lu Chen left Mu Yongzi's place, he returned to the imperial study room again, just when Qin Yushan arrived. After Qin Yushan saluted, he said, "Your Majesty, concubine Mu previously brought back the leader of the Linghu sect's invasion of this world. Do you want to interrogate him personally? After all, he is the little leader of the intruders, and he must know more than the average intruder." Lu Chen said, "If you want to be interrogated, I will go there right away." Then Lu Chen went to the prison. Lei Wenda was tied to the torture rack, his bones were penetrated by iron hooks, and the power in his body was completely abolished, but he still screamed wildly. "You pariahs from the lower world, how dare you do this to me? When the restrictions in the mist world disappear, the Spirit Fox sect will definitely kill all of you. You bunch of untouchables, let me go quickly." Hearing this, Lu Chen chuckled lightly and said to Lei Wenda in the prison, "You are so powerful, how come you were disabled by a group of untouchables? Then aren't you even worse than untouchables, and even more untouchable than untouchables?" End of this chapter. Chapter 624. I'm true to my word, you can go out now. Hearing someone's voice, Rivender immediately looked in the direction of the sound. Seeing the person wearing a black and gold dragon robe, he instantly identified Lu Chen's identity. Lei Wenda sneered and asked, "Are you the Emperor of Daxia? How can a pariah from a lower world be the Emperor of the entire Tianchen continent? Tianchen continent is not something that a pariah like you can own. Let me go as soon as possible and join the Linghu sect. Maybe the Linghu sect will be able to let you in the future. Continue to be the Emperor." Lei Wenda had a reason to dare to be so arrogant. Now he is indeed trapped here, but in his opinion, the Great Xia Dynasty is also in danger. At this time, Lu Chen looked at Lei Wenda with great interest, and asked with a smile, "I am very curious, what gave you the courage to be so arrogant on other people's territory? Are you not afraid that I will kill you directly?" "You." Lei Wenda chuckled and said, "It won't be long before the mist world is over. The restrictions in the mist world will disappear. At that time, all the forces in the mist world will come to compete for the land of Tianchen continent. Do you think your emperor can how long? Now that the Mystic Immortal Sect and the 10,000 Immortals Sect have cooperated, they plan to divide the entire Tianchen continent into two and become the territory of their two sects. They don't need a secular dynasty when they are two sects. You will definitely be destroyed by them by then. Only by joining the Linghu sect and relying on the blessing of the Linghu sect, can your emperor continue to be the emperor." When Lu Chen saw Lei Wenda so confident that he was going to let him go, he said directly, "I'm very curious. What would you think if I told you that the 10,000 Immortals sect is my sect?" As soon as these words came out, Rivend was stunned. When he came to his senses, Rivender showed a panicked look and said, "Impossible, absolutely impossible. You are a pariah from a lower world, how can it be possible? You are the master of the 10,000 Immortals sect, I think you are just a pawn of the 10,000 Immortals sect at best." Even though he said this, Lei Wenda still felt a strong sense of crisis at this time. Even if the Emperor of Great Xia was a pawn of the 10,000 Immortals sect, wouldn't he be doomed next? Lu Chen said calmly, "Whether it's master or chess piece, it doesn't have much to do with you. After all, Daxia City has a very close relationship with Wangxian sect, so do you think you, a disciple of Linghu sect, have fallen into this trap? Is there any hope of survival on the territory of the 10,000 Immortals sect?" Lei Wenda's arrogance was instantly extinguished by Lu Chen. His expression was extremely panicked, his face was pale, and beads of sweat the size of beans slipped down his face. If he continues like this on the territory of the 10,000 Immortals sect, then he may really have no choice but to die. No wonder the woman who captured him is so powerful. It turns out that the 10,000 Immortals sect has already been laying out the plan. Tianchen continent actually belongs to the 10,000 Immortals sect. In this way, even the Mystic Immortals sect has fallen in line with the 10,000 Immortals sect. Of course, none of this matters anymore. What matters is what he can say now to survive. Lei Wenda quickly begged for mercy and said, Your Majesty, I am the leader of the Linghu sect who came to invade Tianchen continent. I know a lot of information about the Linghu sect. As long as you promise to let me live, I will give away all the information about the Linghu sect. Tell you. Hearing this, Lu Chen did not ask, but directly said to the Jin Yiwei soldier on the side, put him down, then give him paper and pen, and let him write slowly. After hearing Lu Chen's order, the Jin Yiwei soldiers took action immediately. After a while, Lei Wenda was put down from the torture rack, and a pen and paper were placed in front of him. After Lei Wenda picked up the pen, he did not start writing immediately. He suddenly thought of something, and then said, Are you guys pretending to be members of the 10,000 Immortals sect and are you trying to get some advice from me? Lei Wenda felt a little puzzled. It was clear that the Linghu sect was the first to discover the spatial rift, but why did the people of the 10,000 Immortals sect occupy the entire Tianchen continent in advance? Could it be that the spatial rift had appeared a long time ago? Is there really such a thing? In terms of possibility, it is indeed possible, but there is another possibility, that is, the Wangxian sect did not occupy this world at all, and the Emperor of Daxia was not a disciple of the Wangxian sect at all. This was just the Emperor of Daxia, a lie made up in order to get something out of him. Hearing Lei Wenda's words, Lu Chen smiled and said, Since you don't believe it, I will prove it to you. Then Lu Chen said to the Jinyi guard soldiers, Go and invite those disciples from the 10,000 Immortals sect. Lu Chen's words made Lei Wenda stunned for a moment. He frowned and looked at Lu Chen. Seeing Lu Chen's calm look, Lei Wenda was startled in his heart. Could it be that the Emperor of Daxia was really a millionaire? People from the Immortal sect? After a while, Yu Wengang and others came to Lu Chen. After seeing Lu Chen, they saluted directly and said, Greetings to your Majesty, long live your Majesty. Seeing that he was really a disciple of the 10,000 Immortals sect, and that the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect even saluted Lu Chen, Lei Wenda was completely in despair. He knew Yu Wengang. Yu Wengang and the other disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect came to this world in the same batch. However, Yu Wengang disappeared quickly. He did not know where he went. Behind him was the Linghu sect that was attacked by 2 disciples. It's over. Generally, disciples of large sects would not easily perform this kind of kneeling ceremony with the emperor of a secular dynasty. Only the emperor who is in a particularly high position, such as those emperors of the immortal dynasty, can make the sect forces bow their heads. The emperor of Great Xia is obviously the emperor of the lower world. It is difficult for Lei Wenda to understand why the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect gave such a big salute to Lu Chen. Could it be that, as the emperor of Great Xia said, the 10,000 Immortals sect is he, the emperor of Daxia? Then his origin as the emperor of Great Xia might be more terrifying than he thought. Revender stopped talking nonsense, picked up the pen, and wrote down everything he knew about the Linghu sect in great detail. He didn't want to die here. Although he was also worried that Lu Chen would go back on his words, he knew in his heart that if he didn't write, he would die even worse. I wrote that there is still a glimmer of hope. After about half an hour, Lei Wenda finished writing what he knew. After the paper about the Linghu sect intelligence was presented in front of Lu Chen carefully read what was written on it. The Linghu sect doesn't have many big secrets, or in other words, Lei Wenda and other Linghu sect disciples don't know much. It is not surprising that the disciples sent by Linghu sect to invade Tianchen continent are all disciples of the Hedao stage. Although the disciples of the Hedao stage are pseudo-celestial beings in this world and are relatively powerful beings, in the mist world, in cultivation the world is no different from ordinary people, it has already been ruined. How could such a disciple come into contact with the core secrets of the sect? At this time, Lei Wenda looked at Lu Chen nervously, fearing that Lu Chen would go back on his word. Lu Chen is now an emperor after all, so he naturally keeps his word. Then Lu Chen said, as I said, you can go out. After hearing Lu Chen's words, Lei Wenda was extremely excited and quickly thanked him and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty, thank you, Your Majesty." For Lu Chen, Lei Wenda has lost his power and is now an ordinary person. There is no difference between death and life. And when he goes out, it might have some other effects. End of chapter. Chapter 625 Waste is Waste. After interrogating Lei Wenda, Lu Chen left the prison and went directly to the arsenal for inspection. He wanted to see the current production status of rune weapons. When Lu Chen appeared at the arsenal, Li Yu, who was in charge of manufacturing rune weapons, hurried out to greet him. Lu Chen originally gave the rune weapons to Mo Xing and his two brothers. But there is a troublesome thing about rune weapons, that is, to carve runes, you only need to be at least a master to carve runes. The two Mo Xing brothers currently do not have such strength, and the craftsmen under them rarely reach this level. Of this condition. In the end, Lu Chen handed over this task to Li Yu from Luoyang College, and asked Li Yu to bring people who were above the master level of the two colleges and had the talent to carve runes to produce rune weapons. After seeing Lu Chen, Li Yu immediately saluted and said, "Greetings to Your Majesty, long live Your Majesty." Lu Chen nodded slightly, "No courtesy. How is the manufacturing progress of rune weapons?" Li Yu replied, 2,000 talisman muskets and 30 talisman cannons have been made. Lu Chen asked, "Has the power of the rune cannon been tested?" Li Yu replied, "It has been tested and it is very powerful. If it hits a heavenly being head-on, the heavenly being may not be able to withstand it." Lu Chen said calmly, "Heavens and humans also have strong and weak abilities." Li Yu said, "What Your Majesty said is true, but it is indeed quite powerful. Your Majesty can test the cannon in person." Lu Chen said, "Let's go, let me see how powerful the cannon you made is." Li Yu immediately made a gesture of invitation, "Your Majesty, please come with me." Soon, Li Yu took Lu Chen to the place where the cannon was tested. At this time, there were already several cannons at the test site. One of the cannons was covered with golden runes, which looked different, and there was a golden rune gun next to it. Lu Chen asked, "This cannon seems to be made of different materials." Li Yu replied, "Your Majesty, the materials inside this cannon are the same as other cannons. The only difference is that the cannon body is stabilized. We added some special materials transported back from Fenjian Island to the appearance of this cannon. Substance. It's the material that Daxia used to make cloud-piercing bows and cloud-piercing arrows in the past." After hearing this, Lu Chen thought for a while. This kind of material is quite special. If it can be used on rune weapons, it can indeed make the rune weapons stronger, but... Lu Chen then continued to ask, "Isn't this material difficult to dissolve?" Li Yu replied, "Yes, we specially sent people to dissolve this material, but so far, only 2 cannons and 10 muskets have been coated with a layer of this material." Lu Chen didn't think much. He immediately came to the cannon and said to the soldier, "Load the cannon. I will test it myself." "Yes, Your Majesty." The soldiers immediately took action to load the cannon with shells. Then Lu Chen put his hand behind the cannon and instilled spiritual power into the cannon. With the infusion of spiritual power, the golden runes on the surface of the cannon emitted blue light. When the blue light got closer and closer to the muzzle, the rune cannon blasted, and the next moment, the entire ground sunken. After the cannonball flew out, it flew for a long time before landing in the forest. Not long after, a huge mushroom cloud rose from the distance. This. Lu Chen was stunned when he saw this mushroom cloud. Is this a rune cannon? Why did it feel like a nuclear weapon? As the mushroom cloud rose, a huge pool was blown out of the test site. Immediately afterwards, the shock wave swept towards Lu Chen and the others. Fortunately, the distance was far enough, otherwise there would be some relatively low-level people. The soldiers may have been taken away. Under the sweep of the shock wave, some ordinary soldiers could not even stand steadily, and they quickly hugged the big tree next to them. After the explosion effect ended, Lu Chen said, "Well, the effect is very good, you guys did a good job." Li Yu said excitedly, "Thank you, Your Majesty. It is a great honor to be praised by Emperor Xia." Lu Chen estimated the power of this artillery. It would not be a problem to kill the 10th level celestial beings with one cannon. The celestial beings are just the most ordinary monks in the world of cultivation. Naturally, they cannot withstand this kind of weapon, which is close to low yield. The power of nuclear weapons. At this time, the corners of Lu Chen's mouth raised slightly. After the restrictions in the mist world disappeared, the invaders from the mist world came and saw these artillery. I wonder if they would be particularly surprised? They will definitely be very satisfied with this gift. Lu Chen then picked up the golden rune musket. He quickly loaded the bullets and pointed it at the woods in the distance. Instill spiritual power and pull the trigger. Gang! There was a loud sound, and then, a blue bullet flew out. After flying to a certain distance, it exploded suddenly, and its power was no less than that of a monk in the Hedao stage who blew himself up. This kind of power can already cause serious damage to a heavenly being. If there are a few more shots, there will be no problem in killing a heavenly being. Lu Chen nodded with satisfaction again, and then said, "Okay, okay." At this time, Lu Chen seemed to have seen the group of invaders scurrying around in the misty world. Qianyuan world. Xinyu Dynasty, Royal Palace. The palace of the Xinyu Dynasty was magnificent, covering an area of almost 100,000 square kilometers. The palace was splendid and decorated with carved beams and paintings. At the top of the palace, there is a huge palace suspended. In this palace lives the Xinyu Emperor who is feared by all the worlds. 100,000 years ago, Emperor Xinyu conquered all major worlds and destroyed countless dynasties and worlds. Nowadays, countless worlds surrender to the Xinyu dynasty. But at the peak of Emperor Xinyu's combat power, Emperor Xinyu suddenly stopped fighting and ran directly back to the Qianyuan world, where he stayed in the palace. To be precise, he has been staying in the palace in the sky. He has not even dealt with the government affairs anymore. He only thinks about cultivation and has handed over all the government affairs to a woman, who is his current queen. At this moment, in a courtyard of the palace in the sky, where the water was flowing and the birds were singing and the flowers were fragrant, a tall man about 3 meters tall was sitting in a pavilion meditating. The next moment, a dark figure appeared outside the pavilion. After feeling someone's presence, the man asked, "How was the trial?" The black shadow immediately replied, "Back to His Majesty Xinyu, except for His Highness the 9th Prince, the trials of all His Highnesses have ended." Hearing this, Emperor Xinyu didn't seem surprised at all. He said calmly, "Waste is waste." At this point, he suddenly thought of something, so he asked, "I remember that his soul beads were placed in low-level worlds. Why haven't they completed the trial yet?" The Black Shadow replied, "Your Majesty Xinyu, His Highness the 9th Prince seems to be addicted to women and has no intention of practicing, which is why his trial has not ended yet." End of chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Thank you.